Let me just try and make sure that I'm on the right meeting. I should be. It's popped up as planning board, so um, yeah. All right, sounds good. I'll try logging out and logging back in again and see if anything happens. And I'll let you know if I get in. All right, thanks. Bye.
join until you broadcast. So I clicked that. We are now broadcasting.
Oh, yeah, here
the
they come.
attendees are jumped up. There's 11 now. 14.
14, yeah.
Let's give it another minute for people to join, and then you can get started, Rich.
Okay.
Yeah, the attendees are coming in now.
Sam, can you confirm when did Concord TV? If anybody see if Concord TV is logged in, or let's get a confirmation that they are. Thanks. You trying to show us your finger there, John? For those of you wondering, we're a little late. Sorry, we had a little bit of a glitch there in the city end to start the meeting, but we'll be starting momentarily.
Actually, Sam or Beth, would you mind trying to get Concord TV, because I'm not finding Mike's email easily. Oh, here it is.
So I've found too, and I know using these meetings, when you're not talking, if you can click mute, to unmute yourself, just hit the space bar on your keyboard. It will temporarily unmute you. You'll be able to talk and then let go. So similar to like talking on a walkie-talkie, when you're ready to talk, you hit the space bar, you talk, you let go of the space bar, and you're back on mute. So it's a nice, easy way to not be listening to people type or listening to your microphones go scratching across your screen. Or
okay,
if you're in speaker view, you're going to see like Heather's view, or if you're up in the upper right hand corner, if you want to change to gallery view will show you all of the speakers or all of the participants at a time. Okay, so we've got looks like 23 participants. I think we are on. I'm getting feedback from constituents that the TV is working. So will we okay to start, Heather?
Yeah, let me just try one more. Teresa's continuing to say that she cannot, the link's not working. So I'm just going to say, I don't know what.
A loud keyboard.
I apologize.
That's okay.
She says, I do not have it, and the one on the agenda is not working. But the one on the agenda should be working.
The one on the agenda is not going to work.
It's not? Somebody said that it was.
Oh, the agenda is just the panelist. That's just the attendees. It's not.
But we can elevate her if she signed in that way.
Okay. Yep.
Steve, I got through to the Zoom link on the agenda, on the PDF agenda.
So again, apologize for everybody for the brief delay, a little technical difficulty in getting started. So I need to read a statement into the record here. As chair of the Concord, New Hampshire City Planning Board, due to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis and in accordance with the Governor Sununu's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there's no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to the meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone and additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. C, providing mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. And D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. With regards to providing public access to the meeting, we are utilizing the Zoom platform for this electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during the meeting through the Zoom platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in the meeting through clicking on the following website address, and that address is www.zoom.us/J/75406629, or by dialing the following phone number, 929-205-6099, and entering the password 7540766629. For those calling in and want to provide public testimony, please dial *9 to alert the host that you'll want to speak. The host will unmute you during the public hearing portion of the meeting. With regard to providing public notice of this meeting, we previously gave notice to the public to have access to the meeting, and the Zoom instructions are provided on the City of Concord's website at www.concordnh.gov/273/planning-board. With regard to providing the public with a way to alert us about access to the problems, if anybody has a problem accessing this meeting, please call 603-568-8515 or send an email to planning@concordnh.gov. With regard to adjourning the meeting, if the public is unable to access the meeting, in the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled at that time. Please note that all votes are taken during this meeting shall be done by a roll call vote. When each member states their presence, also please state whether there's anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. With that, let's start the meeting and take a roll call of attendance. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Chairman Woodfin,
Here.
Councilor Pierce,
Here, and I am alone in the room.
I'm alone as well, sorry.
thank you. Member Hicks,
Here and alone in the room.
Member Rosenberger,
Here and alone in the room.
Vice Chair Foss. You didn't unmute yourself.
Here and
Me?
alone in the room.
Thank you. Member Regan,
Here and alone in the room.
Member Smithmeyer.
Here and I'm alone in the room.
Did I miss
Okay.
anybody?
I think you got everybody, didn't you? Yep. Okay, let's get started. We've got 2 meeting minutes to approve from prior meetings. Item 3 on my agenda anyway is actually, I think it's,
Oh, I forgot to fix that. That's a typo. They accidentally went under the agenda overview, so it's
That's
4A
okay.
and 4B.
that's okay. So we'll do approval of the minutes from the February 19th meeting. I want to take them in two separate motions, and if someone would like to make a motion to approve those minutes as submitted, if you could please do that.
Move approval?
Okay, motion's been made by Councilor Pierce. Any second on that?
Second,
Seconded by Carol Foss. All those in favor?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Pierce did not make that
Oh, I'm
motion.
sorry.
He was absent for that meeting and was Councilor Byron Champlin filled in as
Okay,
the alternate for the city council.
so did we have a motion to approve those minutes from somebody?
Motion came from me. John
Oh, I'm
Regan.
sorry, John. I apologize. You sound just like Earl. So motion was made by John Regan, seconded by Carol Foss. We'll need a roll call vote. If Madam Clerk, if you could take a roll on the vote.
Member Hicks,
Yes.
how about, can we do like a rate? I don't
Yeah,
know.
we could do a raise your hand. You have
Raise
someone to
hand
raise-
so that people don't have to mute and unmute.
All those in
um,
favor?
Yeah, that works.
That work? All those in favor,
Member
just
Reagan?
raise your hand.
Member Regan,
Can't see your hand,
Yes.
John, if you're raising it.
Member
Just raise your
Rosenberger?
hand.
you're,
I can't
Sorry.
figure out how to raise my hand.
No,
yet.
just
I
your
no,
hand.
we're
in the
talking
video.
about physically
See,
raising.
look at me.
Oh.
Oh, physical,
Yeah.
I can't see you guys. You
Yeah.
Oh,
guys
you-
see me?
Why
Yes,
can't you see us?
I don't know. I can't see. I can only see Heather. But that's
Okay.
okay. I raised my
Oh.
hand. As long as you
She's
see my
on
hand.
presenter review.
in the top right corner of your screen, there's a square. And if you click that square, it will give you gallery view, and then you will be able to see everyone.
I hate to tell you, that's not working for me.
The
But
top
that's
right.
The
So-
top of my screen, I only have nothing.
Okay,
Don't worry.
let's
Don't
get
worry.
Suzanne, let's get Suzanne's vote just for the record as well, Suzanne.
Oh, I found it. It was at the bottom.
My hand's up.
Okay.
We can't see you. Okay, now on the March 30th meeting minutes, we need to make one quick change on the 30th minutes, Lisa. So those minutes need to be amended that Councilor Byron Champlin did attend the meeting, but he was a non-voting participant. So in the minutes, it does mention Councilor Champlin several times asking questions, and it doesn't feel that it was outlined that he was an attendee, but not a voting member. So if you could make those changes to that, and with that change, anybody else have any other changes to that the March 30th special meeting of this board? If not, we'll take a motion.
I move the minutes as amended.
Okay, we have a second.
Okay.
Seconded by Mr. Hicks. All those in favor?
Aye.
Suzanne voted aye as well. For the
Aye.
record, that's a unanimous vote. I don't know if we'll do that. We'll do that a little differently, I think, with a roll call vote as well, Heather, going forward. So a quick overview of the agenda items tonight. Everything on the agenda, I believe, Heather, is on our docket, and nothing's been removed last minute. Is that right?
Correct.
So we'll hear everything that's on the docket. I do want to make one little bit of a change that we're not used to on the consent agenda items when we get into consent, since it's a quick, fast-moving meeting. If we have items on consent that somebody has a question on, we may say we don't have any questions. We need to give the audience a chance to respond and ask a question and get them queued up to ask questions. So when we look at the consent agenda items, we're going to ask the board members and the panelists if anybody has a consent agenda item that they want to remove from consent. They can do that. We'll remove it, and then we'll move on to one item, the next item on the list, to take that as a public hearing item, and then come back to the consent agenda items and see if anybody has any questions. Hopefully that makes sense. But again, just to give people time to respond to any. So on our agenda, we're moving to the items by consent. Is that right, Heather? So we're going to have items 5A through 5K are on our consent agenda tonight. Does any member of the any member of the board wish to pull one of those items? Teresa?
I'm not wishing to pull one of the items, but I have a conflict with one of the items, so therefore I won't be voting.
Okay.
I won't be voting on the consent agenda.
Okay, that's fine. We still have a quorum, right, Heather?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's fine. Thank you for that. Any
welcome.
other member of the board wish to pull any of those items from the consent agenda? If not, what we'll do is we will put a public request out if any member of the audience has any items on the consent agenda, which are items 5A through 5K, that they would like further discussed or have opposition to. Please make yourself known to staff, and we will come right back to that item. So we're going to move one item ahead on your agendas here, board members, to item 6, which is design review applications. Could we read item 6A into the record?
Yes, 6A, before you go on, can I make one statement?
Yep.
For members of the public, if you dial, who have called in, if you dial *9,
Yep.
that will allow you to raise your hand if there's an item that you do want to comment on or have a question about.
Right.
Everyone else who's Zoom, when used the computer link, should just be able to raise their hand. So item 6A, Oak Stream Properties, on behalf of Conservation Law Foundation, requests ADR approval to add a new projecting sign at 27 North Main Street in the Central Business Performance District. ADR had recommended to table this and to get more information, and the applicant apparently was okay with it. I don't see them here. I don't see anyone on the attendees raising their hand to speak on this. So we just wanted to pull it from the consent so that the board could make a motion to table it until next month.
Okay. So again, ADR I was at the ADR meeting. There was some questions regarding the quality of the sign, the thickness of the sign, the colors of the sign on Main Street, and how it was going to be mounted to the building. So if we could take a motion from someone to table this application, we will send it back to them to come to ADR with the information that they were looking for.
Move to table.
Okay, we've got a Councilor
Second.
Pierce making a motion to move to table, and Carol Foss has seconded that. All those in favor, again, Heather, what's the best solution? Do we want to raise hands?
No, I think the
visually?
raising hands is working really well. It's
Okay,
clear
so
who's
It's clear
and-
who's voting and who's not.
correct.
So all those in favor, please raise your hand to the camera.
And
Looks like
Suzanne
it's
Smith-Meyer,
unanimous.
yeah,
And
just
Suzanne
for aye.
Smith-Myers said aye. So that's unanimous that will be tabled. So we'll table that, send that back to Architectural Design Review for their feedback, and go from there. Any, Beth or Sam, any member of the audience wishing to chime in on those consent agenda items 5A through K?
No.
Okay, so before us, we've got items 5A through K on consent with Architectural Design Review recommendations for just about all of them. Would someone like to make a motion to approve those applications as submitted under consent?
So move. Approval. Second.
Motion's been made by Matt Hicks, seconded by Councilor Pierce. All those in favor visually?
Aye, with me, Rich, again.
That was John Regan, wasn't it? John, so the record, Lisa, John Regan made that second, and Matt Hicks was the original motion.
Can I interject real quick?
Yep.
People that are on the phone can't see the visual vote.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if we have to do the full roll call.
Okay.
Well, I think if Rich is announcing that it's unanimous at the end of it, then that is letting them know that it was unanimous, that everybody raised their hand. But I noticed that Member Rosenberger, you did not raise your hand, so are you
I've
abstaining?
abstained because
You
I have
abstained from the
a,
consent. Yeah.
Okay.
I registered a conflict with one of the items.
Okay.
I sit on the
Well,
board of one of the
yeah,
organizations.
so I think if Rich is summarizing what happened, I think that should be okay.
Okay. I think technically we probably need to do the roll call. So if you could
All
just
right,
call the
that's-
roll on it, Heather.
Yep.
Let's call the roll if we could on this. We've got a motion and a second to approve all of those consent agenda items as submitted. Could you call the roll?
Member Hicks,
Aye.
Member Pierce,
Aye.
Member Rosenberger,
Not voting.
Chairman Woodfin,
Aye.
Member Foss,
Aye.
Member Regan,
Aye.
Member Smith-Meyer.
Aye.
Okay, and
Aye.
we'll do that. We'll do that going forward. As much as I'd like to move it along with videos, I think just for the record, it's going to be a better call to do it that way. Okay, so we have already addressed item 6A under design review. So let's move on to item 7 in our agenda items. So this is the application by Richard D. Bartlett. So I saw Mark Sargent was in our attendees. So if we can get him queued up, ready to go. Could we read item 7A into the record?
Yeah, it's Richard D. Bartlett Associates on behalf of Winter Street Investments. Requests minor subdivision approval for the conversion of an existing duplex to a 2-unit condominium at 1 to 3 By Street in the neighborhood residential district. Staff does recommend that the application be determined complete, not a development of regional impact, and the public hearing opened.
Okay, so there is a determination of completeness component. Staff recommends that we find the application, determine the application complete, and there is no recommendation that this application is a development of regional impact. Would someone like to make a motion to determine those two items and open the public hearing?
So moved.
Okay, we'll take that. So moved by, who made that? Was that Mr. Regan?
No, that
Not
was
this
Mr.
time.
Pierce.
Councilor Pierce, and Carol, would you second that?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Should we roll
Member
call again?
Hicks, Member Hicks,
Aye.
Counselor Pierce,
Aye.
Member Rosenberger,
Aye.
Member Chairman Woodfin,
Here, aye.
Member Foss,
Aye.
Member Regan,
Aye.
and Member Smith-Meyer.
Okay.
Aye.
So let's open the public hearing. If the attendee's here, if we could bring him into our panelist group.
Sure. Do you want an update from staff?
I do. Yeah, I just want to get the attendee squared away first.
Is that Dan Mullen?
Yes,
Okay.
Okay, Sam, is this your project?
it is.
Okay, could you give us a staff update?
Sure. So this is an existing duplex. The applicant's wishing to convert it into a 2-unit condominium. They've requested 2 waivers for this project, one of which is relative to the scale at which the plans are drawn, which staff is supporting. The other is in regards to showing municipal sewer information. There's been some conversations between engineering and general services in regards to this. Currently, staff is not supporting this waiver, but I would defer to Dave Cedarholm for further information on the conversations. That's all I got.
Okay, so before we do get to the applicant and hear on his side, Dave, if you're available, if you could give us a quick update on this, on anything that may have changed or any recommendations from the engineering side of the fence.
Sure. So this is Dave Cedarholm. Martha Drucker visited with the applicant at the site today. There has been a investigation of the sewer. The sewer currently is an old sewer in which both the services from the 2 units combine into one, a 6-inch asbestos cement sewer line that is 240 feet long, and also picks up the neighboring service from 7 and 9 by Street. We've not seen a video inspection of that entire line. So currently it doesn't meet the city standards for 2 separate units. And until we see a sewer inspection of the full 240 feet of the service, we would not support approving this application.
Okay. Is the applicant online, available to give us an update on this project and maybe address those sewer concerns?
He should be.
Mr. Mullen, if you're there, we can't hear you. We see you talking.
It says that it does not, it says that he's unmuted and can speak. So I don't know if maybe he's got himself muted. So I've got Joe Witten. So Joe Witten has now been allowed to speak and has been unmuted. They're both unmuted.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Wonderful. Thanks for making time today. I actually did not meet with anyone at the property today. I know David just mentioned that Martha met with me. I didn't meet with anyone at the property today. I know she mentioned that she did stop by. Do you know any? Because I certainly wasn't there with her.
I think actually, I guess I'm wrong. I believe she met with the plumber.
Okay. Thank you. So in speaking with the plumber, when I originally was buying the property, I had a plumber go through and inspect it, and he recently just did a video inspection yesterday as well. He tested the water flow of the sewer pipe, and there didn't seem to be any backup. He also snaked it upwards of 100 feet. He did a video inspection all the way to the neighboring property as well, and didn't see any defects in the sewer pipe, and also no flaking in the sewer pipe. I don't know how long it's been there. I know Dave or Martha had mentioned that obviously, the sewer system has been there for a while, as most properties in that area. I know that the next door does connect into the same pipe. But from what I understand from the plumbing company that I hired, they don't see any issues with the actual system itself. They also mentioned that between both units, it allows up to, I think the term is CFUs. Dave, you obviously know a lot more about this than I do, but I believe it's up to 40 CFUs is the total 2-unit combined, the two condos. And the sewer system that's there is allows up to 182. So it only represents only 23% capacity of what that sewer line can hold. So there's, as far as it not working out, I understand maybe up to today's standards if you're building something brand new, but this property is 120 years old. It's in great condition. We're updating all of the electrical, all of the plumbing internally, and it does not take up anywhere near 80% capacity or 90% capacity. It takes up 23% capacity. And from what we saw inside of the sewer line, it's in good condition. You know, there's no flaking, there's no defects. Yes, he was unable to go the full 250 feet because at some point many years ago, the town allowed the next door neighbor to tie into the same sewer system. And so there's a Y connector there. So he was unable to go the full amount. But from what he saw yesterday, he didn't have any concerns even after the water test of allowing water to run for over 2 hours with no backup. So that's, and again, I'm not an expert in this. I'm just going off of the company that I hired, what they're telling me. So I guess as far as the sewer line goes, that's all I have as far as information.
So, David, does that change your mind at all, or are you still, from a engineering perspective, not in favor of the waiver?
So from what I understand, the sewer video went 20 feet down the line to where the service from 7 and 9 enters. So there's still 220 feet of sewer service that we don't know the condition of. You know, until we're confident that the entire service is in good shape, it was likely installed in the 40s. And sure, it may have plenty of capacity, but capacity is different than the condition of an old pipe.
Okay. So without the waivers, is this project, Mr. Whitten, is this project viable without the waivers if the waivers weren't granted?
It's not, no.
Okay. So Heather, how do we move forward with this? Again, we can ask for the waivers and do a vote on the waivers. I don't want to move into the minor subdivision approvals until we've addressed the waivers if it's not going to be a viable project going forward.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Can I also, before you do it, can I say one more thing?
Sure.
I know when I spoke to Martha, her concern was that in the future, once homeowners have purchased both condos, if there's an issue with the sewer line 5 years or 10 years from now, how would the town or city be able to address it? And I did mention to her that in the condo association docs and also in the bylaws, it would clearly indicate that both owners of each unit would be responsible for any sewer line issues that need to be fixed, just like in any other condo association or responsibilities are outlined. So I just want to make it clear, I'm not expecting that 5 or 10 years from now, you know, if there's an issue in the line that the town of Concord has to fit the bill, it's going to be clearly defined in the condo association docs, which the town obviously will also be provided. We have an attorney and a title company writing those up as we speak. So I just wanted to be clear on that.
Okay, and again, David, I'll ask for your feedback on that.
You know, there has been one attempt to video down the pipe, and there are different types of equipment. So just because they're only able to get 20 feet down the pipe with a certain equipment they had doesn't mean that some other video equipment couldn't be able to video inspect the entire line. So it's possible that the rest of the line is in good shape. So I would suggest that the applicant find another outfit who has the equipment to video the whole thing.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from board members wishing to address this?
I'd just like a clarification. It sounded from what Mr. Whitten just said that the condo owners would ultimately be responsible for any problems with the sewer line, but it seems to me that future problems could be caused by the other household that is connected to the line. So I just want to clarify the responsibility of these condo owners is with respect to that joint.
You broke up a little bit at the end, but I think I understood your question. So what I was saying is, from what I'm being told, from at least the plumbing company, I know Dave and Martha have concerns because they haven't seen the whole sewer line. But from what I'm told, the sewer line is fine and in working condition. There are no issues. All I was saying is that if there are issues that happen years from now, whatever, both condo units would be responsible because that's the sewer line that feeds the building. So all I was saying is that if there are issues, the responsibility would fall on the owners of the property. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but.
Well, it does. It doesn't change the fact that that engineering's looked at it and said that they want a review of 200 feet the whole length. And we're looking at, you know, section 150311, information to be shown on the final plat underneath the municipal sewer piece, and it clearly outlines what's intended for that particular waiver. So if staff doesn't support the waiver, you know, we can go ahead and ask for a vote, but you know, it's unlikely that we're going to move forward with this unless there's a you know, a change in heart from the engineering staff. So again, I think, David, what I'm hearing you say, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, is that you want to see the entire length of pipe snaked and video recorded to clarify what's there all the way to the final output, the output level, and that would be what's needed to move forward. Is that right?
That is right. And, you know, one thing I'd like to add is that today's standard is to have separate independent services from each unit.
Right.
So allowing this connection to move forward with the 3 units attached to this one pipe, utilizing this one pipe, is a deviation in itself. So whether the pipe has sufficient capacity is irrelevant if we're going to allow a connection from 3 units to, and actually it's 4 units because there's 2 units next door, to utilize this pipe. It's a deviation of the standard as it is. So I would certainly want to know, if I was one of the owners, that pipe is in great shape all the way to the end.
Okay, so it's non-conforming now, and just like anything that we do that's non-conforming, when an applicant comes to us with a change, that, you know, we typically make them conform with updated code. So if they had an old 1800s house and it had a railing that went outside, or whatever the issue is, we would typically make them conform. So I want to be clear on our status with the applicant. If we say we want to have it snaked and it comes back and it snakes okay, are we still okay approving a subdivision with essentially four feeds going into it where it's non-conforming right out of the gate? Is that something that staff is ready to say it's okay to do?
Planning would defer to engineering.
Okay, so David, is there a position where you're going to say, you know, if the only thing that I just want to come up with some feedback to the applicant to either say you're going to need to put a new sewer line in completely, one that feeds your new building, or you're going to need to snake it and show us that it can handle. I mean, whether it can handle it or not, it doesn't really matter. I guess it's do we want to put another unit into a non-conforming situation that's already there?
Right. It's possible that 150 feet down the line, that the sewer is half collapsed, and there's a very significant slope in the pipe. So it could be 3/4 the way plugged and still be able to allow liquid through. So, you know, just doing a liquid test is not going to give us really any indication on what condition the sewer is for the whole length. So, you know, we're looking at least an 80-year-old sewer, and it's asbestos pipe, or maybe it's even clay pipe. We don't really know what the full length is. So, for engineering to support utilizing this pipe going forward, we're going to have to get an assessment of the entire thing.
Okay, and then that would suffice. So if it comes back and it's crystal clear, smooth all the way through, then engineering would support the waiver as it sits, and he could move forward. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to ask if anybody would like to make a motion to grant that particular waiver. So section 1503.11 to grant that municipal sewer waiver as it's been outlined in your packet. Would anyone like to make a motion to grant that waiver? I want to close the public hearing as well, Heather.
Wait, I have a question. I'm just got a little confused. I want to make sure we understand what we're saying. Are we granting the waiver subject to the condition that they video the whole thing, or
no?
We're just granting it.
I want to know if we have support to grant the waiver as it sits, or if we reject that completely and send the applicant back.
Okay.
Make them come back to us with engineering's blessing at that point.
Gotcha.
So I'm going to close the public hearing so we can take off Mr. Whitten. Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Mullen. I hope you got the feedback in if you needed to. So we'll close the public hearing, and if no one would, I didn't see any hands go up, or I didn't see any motions to make that. Oops, I do see hands now. So Earl?
Yes, thank you. I actually have a question for David Cederholm. If there were to be a failure of this sewer pipe in the future, what would happen? What would be the requirement of the building owner? Would we then revert back to 4 units, 4 separate sewer pipes, or could you just fix what was in place?
Well, it's likely that you could fix what is in place. We don't have a lot of information on that line, but 240 feet is not that long of a sewer. It's 6-inch diameter. It could be lined internally, so there could be a compromise in the pipe, and as long as they get a liner through it, they could line the pipe and essentially create a new, slightly smaller diameter pipe inside it. So the in-place lining technologies are pretty good for stuff like that.
But either way, Earl, I think that the end result is the homeowners, the condo owners, the people that are already living there are going to be responsible for any change. So I guess Earl's question would be, you've got 2 houses that are fed by it. If all of a sudden it collapsed at the end, you'd need to, both of those would be responsible for their own restoration of it, basically.
That's correct.
Yeah, there's no city's not on for this at all.
Yeah, there is an alternative. There is a sewer on By Street, and so each one of these units could be replumbed to go out the front of the building on By Street. So if there's that would be expensive because you're replumbing the interior of the building as well as having to excavate out into By Street. So I'm not suggesting that this is that would be an inexpensive fix, but if that sewer was completely unviable in the back, both those homes have an opportunity to tie into the sewer in By Street.
Okay. John Regan, I saw your hand up. Would you like to ask a question?
Quickly, just clarification. Seems like the second waiver, which is 1503.11, deals with information that goes on the final plat. Do we need to do the full survey to get that information? I mean, I don't see really much reference to the condition of the pipe, but I'm just wondering that particular, or is that something that goes with the granting of the minor subdivision? Is it one of the conditions for that?
That waiver is in regards to information on the plat, but given there are questions about the existing conditions, which would then be the information that would go on the plat, we're not supporting the waiver because of the lack of information in the field that can be put on the. Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, Teresa?
Yeah, I am wondering if it's appropriate to make a motion to table this and give the applicant time to do the snaking of the sewer and work things out with the city and then bring it back, hopefully at the next meeting.
Good idea.
Yep, so
That's
I'd like to make a motion to
acceptable.
table.
Okay.
I'll second that.
So we've got a motion to table, second table. Any comments from staff or concerns or issues? David?
Yeah, I have a comment. There is also an issue with the water service. There's currently one water service, and the current standards for individual units is that each unit have a separate water service. And currently there have been a lot of discussions between the plumber and code. Code suggested on a solution that actually doesn't meet city standards for individual units. And so I was just curious if this waiver request, I wasn't sure if it also included the water service.
No, it doesn't include anything regarding the water because that wasn't addressed in the waiver, but the point is taken and it probably should be noted. Hopefully the attendees still there listening, and Stam, if this is your project, please make them aware, but we'll look at all of that. Again, once it's open to us and once there's an application in front of us, if staff isn't comfortable with an existing water supply, or if there's requirements that aren't particularly outlined in a waiver, we're going to hear that at the application. They're going to move another stage down the ramp here. We'll hear that when they come to planning to get the subdivision approval, and it might trip them up again. So if we can just let them know that that's a concern and will be addressed, either it won't be through a waiver process, but it would be through the application when they come to us. It would be noted at that point. So, Dave, thank you for that. Any other comments or questions or concerns from the board? We've got a motion to table. Oops. Did anybody make a second?
This is Councilor Pierce, or I'm sorry, Planning Board Member Pierce. That's a great point, and I would ask staff that when this comes before us again, that there is some mention of the water service. So in fairness to the person developing and the people, the residents, that we get this all done and be able to grant the waivers at the next meeting.
In just one shot. We don't want to have them coming back and going forth. So we've got a motion. Did we have a second? Or someone like
Yes, I seconded Teresa's motion.
Okay, so Teresa's second. We'll take a roll call vote for all those in favor. Let's run through, Heather.
Member Hicks?
Yes.
Councilor Pierce?
Yes.
Member Regan?
Yes.
Chairman Woodfin?
Yes.
Member Foss?
Yes.
Member Rosenberger?
Yes.
And Member Smithmeyer?
Yes.
Okay, so that motion has been tabled. Staff will work with the applicant and hopefully bring us back a plan that we can have going forward. So let's move on to the next item on our agenda, 7B. Madam Clerk, if we could read that into the record.
Richard D. Bartlett and Associates on behalf of Mary F. and Christopher R. Miller, requesting a minor subdivision approval for a 2-lot subdivision at 25 Portsmouth Street in the neighborhood residential district. Staff recommends the application be determined complete, not a development of regional impact, and to open the public hearing.
Okay, so we've got a determination of completeness component, no development of regional impact. Would someone like to make a motion to determine the application complete and open the public hearing?
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
motion's been made and seconded by who?
John Regan.
Seconded by John Regan. Roll call for all those in favor?
Member Hicks?
Yes.
Councilor Pierce?
Yes.
Member Regan?
Yes.
Chairman Woodfin?
Yes.
Member Foss?
Yes.
Member Rosenberger?
Yes.
And Member Smithmeyer?
Yes.
Okay, so if the applicant's here, if we could unmute him and then, or her, and then get a quick update from staff on this project.
Yeah, can I just note, I believe I'm showing Mark Sargent in the attendees, but he hasn't requested to speak. So I would just say, Mr. Sargent, if you are there and you do want to present, please indicate to me to raise your hand or something so that we know.
There you go.
Did you
Just
do it?
raised his hand. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And then thank you. Did I do it? Yes. No.
No, you put Liz Nolan in.
Okay. Beth, you can give the update while I fix it.
Okay. It's not a long update. It's a pretty simple 2-lot subdivision. No waivers are requested. We had some planning and engineering comments. They presented a revised plan on Friday, so they've addressed the conditions for addressing planning and engineering comments. That's it. I don't have much else to
Where
say.
did he go? I was just about to, there you go. Okay.
Okay, so Mr. Sargent, are you with us?
I am.
Wow, look at that. First try.
And I will share the screen so you can see the plan.
Ooh, I like that much better.
Sorry.
That's a lot.
Okay.
Okay, Mark, if you could run us through this this project.
You are, let's see, I'm unmute you. Okay, now you are unmuted.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, great. I hope everybody's doing well. This property is located at 25 Portsmouth Street. Has a total area of 0.75 acres with 241.19 feet of frontage on Portsmouth Street. And it's serviced by municipal sewer and municipal water. So the proposal before the board this evening is to create one additional lot, which is on the left-hand side of the property. That lot would be 0.25 acres with 80 feet of frontage. That leaves a remaining lot with the existing homestead of 0.5 acres with 161.2 feet of frontage. And it's about that simple.
One sewer line or two, Mark?
No, it's going to have its own separate sewer line for that lot, so, and water.
Okay. All right, so we do have a public component to this. Any member of the audience wish to address this application? If you could make yourself known by raising your hand or hitting star 9 on your phone to make yourself known. We'll hear you on this topic. Any other questions or concerns from staff? It looks pretty straightforward, Beth, I believe. Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Any member of the board have any questions or comments regarding this while we're waiting on the audience?
I have a quick question
Okay.
for Heather. Does this conform to proposed zoning changes?
We didn't really evaluate it basically. It probably would, but I didn't evaluate that.
Okay, thank you.
I assume it would. The proposed changes in most cases are more lenient than the existing.
Okay, I don't see anybody's hand up on the attendee side. So if someone would like to make a motion to, before us on our packet here, we've got 3.1, which is to grant minor subdivision approval for a 2-lot subdivision at 25 Portsmouth Street, subject to the following precedent conditions, which are outlined in precedent conditions 1 through 7. And I believe that's it. Is that right? Yeah, just precedent conditions 1 through 7. Would someone like to make a motion to grant that minor subdivision approval as outlined?
Move approval.
We've got a motion by Councilor Pierce. Carol, is that a second from you?
Second.
All those in favor, if we could take a roll call vote?
Member Hicks?
Yes.
Councilor Pierce?
Yes.
Member Regan?
Yes.
Chairman Woodfin?
Aye.
Member Foss?
Aye.
Member Rosenberger?
Yes.
And Member Smithmeyer?
Yes.
Okay, that subdivision approval has been done and granted. Mark, you're all set. Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you very much.
Look forward
folks.
to seeing you in person again, hopefully very soon.
Yeah, hopefully soon. Everybody
Okay.
take care.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, let's move on to item 7C on our agenda. If we could read that into the record, please.
Kevin Laro, I'm not sure how to say that, I apologize. And Sarah Hughes requesting a conditional use permit for Article 2878B to allow a reduction. This is actually incorrect. It's not for an additional driveway. It's to allow reduction in the distance between driveways. at 48 Auburn Street in the single-family residential district. Staff does recommend that the application be determined complete, not a development of regional impact, and that the public hearing be opened.
Okay, so we've got a determination of completeness component. If the applicant could make themselves known to staff, we'll queue you up. We've got the determination of completeness component and not a development of regional impact. Would a member of the board like to make a motion to determine the application complete and open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Carol Foss and seconded by Councilor Pierce. All those in favor? Again, roll call vote.
Member Hicks?
Oh, we caught you, Matt.
Yeah.
No, my pointer's on the other screen, so I can't say yes. If I put the pointer on that screen.
Councilor Pierce?
Yes.
Chairman Woodfin?
Yes.
Member Regan?
Yes.
Member Foss?
Yes.
Member Rosenberger?
Yes.
And Member Smith-Meyer?
Yeah.
Okay, so the application's been determined complete. We are opening the public hearing. Let's get a quick staff update on this project, if we could.
Sure. So this is for residents on 48 Auburn Street. They would like to expand their current driveway is 12 feet in width. They'd like to expand it to be able to fit more cars in their driveway so they don't have to park on the street. There's an existing nonconformity where there's a separation between the abutter and they're hoping to move to sort of decrease that separation even more to approximately 24 feet. So that they can expand their driveway. They have to move in that direction because of the location of the hydrant or a water meter. I've been in discussions with the property owner. They originally requested a larger driveway, but after discussions between engineering and planning staff, we requested that they reduce the size. So they went from a 28-foot driveway to a 20-foot driveway. They still thought that they can make it smaller. So we're making, just to make it easier for her going through this process, putting a condition that they try to make the driveway smaller and reduce or increase the separation a little bit more during the driveway permit process with the assistance of the engineering technician. So I believe Sarah is on the phone. She didn't have a presentation to make. She's here if anybody has any questions, or you can ask me if you have any questions.
I have promoted her to panelist, and so if she wishes to, she can.
I have a question for Beth.
Yes.
Go ahead, Earl.
This is Councilor Pierce. Beth, excuse me. You said 20 feet, but I see in the report it says 24 feet. Did I misunderstand?
The driveway width itself is 20 feet. The separation is 24 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Ms. Hughes, if you're on the line, if you'd like to give us a quick presentation.
I don't think she wanted to give a presentation. No. She's just there for questions.
They're there for questions. Fine. Okay, that's great. Any questions of this applicant from the board?
I don't know. Is she there? She hasn't said anything. I see
Sarah Hughes. You've got her listed. Let's ask the audience if there's any members of the audience that wish to address this. If you could make yourself known to the host by raising your hand or hitting *9 if you're dialed in. That will notify us that you'd like to speak, and we'll recognize you. If not, we'll look for any other feedback from the board. If anybody would like to ask a question, or I don't see anybody that's raised their hand. Heather, is that right?
No.
No. Okay. Any other comments from the board, or if not, we'll take a motion to recognize that staff is recommending a conditional use permit approval. Well, no, staff's not recommending, but we have before us 3.1, which is to grant conditional use permit approval in accordance with section 28-7-8B of the zoning ordinance to allow a 24-foot separation at 48 Auburn Street, where a 40-foot separation is required, subject to the condition that the applicant work with the engineering staff during the driveway permit process and reduce the width of the driveway to any extent possible. Would someone like to make a motion to grant that conditional use permit as outlined?
So moved.
Motion's been made by Suzanne Smith Myers. Who seconded that? Sorry.
John Regan.
John Regan. Thank you, John.
Favor? Let's do a roll call, please.
Member Hicks?
Yep.
Counselor Pierce?
Yes.
Chairman Woodfin?
Yes.
Member Regan?
Yes.
Member Smithmeyer?
Yes.
Member Foss? Member
Yes.
Foss? Okay. Member Rosenberger?
We missed you, Teresa.
Yes, again, I'm having a hard time hearing.
Okay, sorry, we got you. Yes. Okay, so that motion passes and that conditional use permit is approved. All right, let's move on to the next item.
Okay, we've got S&H Land Services on behalf of Bethany Z and Ray Merrier requesting minor subdivision approval for a 2-lot subdivision at 73 Hoyt Road in the medium density and open space residential district. Staff does recommend the application be determined complete, not a development of regional impact, and open the public hearing.
Okay, so we've got another determination of completeness component with this, and the application has not triggered the development of regional impact RSA. If we could take a motion to find that determine the application complete and open the public hearing, that would be great. Someone like to
So
make that?
moved, Counselor Pierce.
Motion was made by Councilor Pierce,
Second,
second by Carol Foss. All those in favor? Well, let's do a roll call. Sorry.
Okay. Member Hicks?
Yes.
Counselor Pierce?
Yes.
Member Regan?
Yes.
Chairman Woodfin?
Yes.
Member Rosenberger?
Yes.
Member Smithmeyer?
Yes.
Member Foss?
yes.
That's everybody.
Okay, so if we could get a quick update from staff on this project, and if the applicant is there, I see a hand up. If we could get them queued up, if this is one of your projects, either Sam or Heather, or Beth, could you give us an update?
Sure. I'm sharing my screen so that you can see the plan. This is page 2. As stated, this is a 2-lot subdivision, pretty straightforward. The applicant has requested a waiver from showing field soil tests. They have provided the USDA web soil survey on the plan. We have granted that waiver in the past with that information. There was some comments regarding the the existing well on the existing lot being with a 75-foot protective radius encroaches on the new lot as well as into the road. That has been observed by the applicant and their consultant, where potential well location has been provided on the plan.
Okay, is the applicant queued up and ready to go?
I believe.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Excellent.
If you could just state your name for the record.
My name is Robert Deegan with S&H Land Services. I'm here tonight representing the Mariers, who I'm hoping are present. I'm on my iPhone, so I can only see right now the plan that's being shared and Heather's face.
Would they? Should I allow them to speak as well?
If they would like to, I asked them to be there in case there were any questions that couldn't be answered by me. But
okay, I just promoted them to be able to speak.
So they're here. That's great. So anyways, it's a pretty straightforward application. The lot is approximately 4 3/4 acres. Both the lots easily exceed the requirements of the zoning ordinance. As Sam mentioned, the well is an issue, but we are preparing, at the request of the engineering department, an easement to cover that. And there was a note that they requested to be added that if the well needs to be redug in the future, that it will be put somewhere within the lot. Most likely it would go somewhere like where the potential well is shown on the plan. We also do have our subdivision approval from the state. Got that in February. I don't know if a copy was given to the city already, but we can provide that along with all our other materials when the time comes. And I think all our other comments were just changes in notation and like, engineering wanted the tax maps to be labeled 07Z instead of just 7Z.
Leave it to the engineering department to want that type of stuff. We do have a public hearing component for this, so if there is any member of the audience or anybody listening that would like to give testimony regarding this application, if you could make yourself known by raising your hand or hitting *9. I think we just had someone pop in there, Heather, if we could promote that person to allow them.
JAS, and I am allowing them to talk, so they should be able to speak. Right, unmute.
Okay, so you are present and able to speak if you'd like to offer some testimony.
That person has to unmute themselves. For some reason, I'm not able to.
Hello.
There you go. So
Yep.
if you could state your name for the record.
Sure. My name is Alvin.
Okay, Alvin.
Yeah.
Are you a resident of Concord?
Very, very true. Yep, that's correct.
Okay.
We need a full name and address for the record.
So Alvin Hoyer, and it's 70 Hoyt Road.
Okay, Mr. Hoyer, welcome to the table, I like to say, but welcome to the meeting. If you could feel free to give us some testimony regarding this application.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to double check and just ensure that whatever building or structure is being put on, which would be almost immediately across from our current lot, that there's a certain setback from the road, ensuring not only the curb appeal of the street, but most importantly, obviously, the privacy of the surrounding residents.
Okay.
There is a 25-foot minimum front setback, and that is shown on the plan, and that would be adhered to.
Sam, could you zoom in on that plan just a little bit?
Sure.
So
25 feet, this is the setback. So anywhere within these hash lines, the building could be built.
Anywhere within the hash lines up to that, say, square 4K area in the back?
And just to orient me, where's Hoyt Road? Over there? Okay, yeah.
Right here.
Right
South,
across the
yep.
front. So you're right at the bottom of the screen, Mr. Hoyer, right there.
Yep.
So typical building lot setbacks apply, Sam, as far as frontage, make it look nice is what the neighbors obviously want and what we want as well. Again, you don't have to answer this, either the homeowner or the developer, but are the plans to put the house near the street, or they put the house back a little farther in the lot? And again, you don't have to answer that. You can defer and say you're not sure yet, but it's worth asking the question.
I believe the homeowners had indicated that their intent was to build out in the back near where that 4K area was shown.
Yeah.
Okay, so then just driveway access from the street and up to the property.
That is my understanding of their intent.
And again, you're not bound by that. I just wanted to ask the question for the abutters to know where it might be going.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Hoyer?
No, I think that should be it for now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony.
I apologize. Can I ask, sir, for you to spell your name for the record? The last name?
Sure, it's Heuer.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Any other member of the audience wish to address this application? Again, if you could make yourself known to staff by raising your hand or hitting *9 for testimony. If not, Sam, if we could get rid of the screen.
I would just like to add one thing. I did receive an email today from the Chases, who are abutters right across the street, and expressing their strong support for this subdivision as it fits the character of the neighborhood.
Okay, excellent. Any other comments from the board regarding this? No? If not, we will close the public hearing. Again, on this, we have a waiver application and then a subdivision approval. So we'll take the waiver. Can we take the waiver separately, Heather, or can we do them all in one shot?
How many waivers?
Just one waiver.
Yeah.
I'm going to do them all in one, so that I'm going to read it into the record here. There's 2.1 in our packet. The applicant requested a waiver from section 12036, which is soils, stating that the plans show soil data taken from the USDA web soil survey, and on-site test bits have been performed, which prove that the land will support proposed development. Staff is in support of that waiver, and we'll put that in with the recommendation, if we can, to do the to grant the waiver and also do the minor subdivision approval. So in the 4.2, I'm sorry, I read the wrong number there. 4.1 was to grant the waiver, and then 4.2 is to grant the minor subdivision approval for a 2-lot subdivision at 73 Hoyt Road, subject to the following conditions, which are outlined in condition 1 through 9. Is that it? That's it, right? Yeah, that's it. So conditions 1 through 9. Would someone like to make a motion to grant that waiver and that subdivision approval as outlined?
So moved.
Second.
Counselor Pierce.
Motion's been made and seconded. Let's do a roll call vote if we can on
Who was
approvals.
second?
Who was
I think Suzanne beat me.
Suzanne beat him.
Member Hicks,
Yes.
Counselor Pierce,
Yes.
Member Regan,
Yes.
Chairman Woodfin,
Yes.
Member Foss,
Yes.
Member Rosenberger,
Yes.
and Member Smithmeyer.
Yes.
Okay.
That motion passes. That's all set. Thank you very much for your testimony and for the presentation. Let's move on to item 7E in our agenda. You could read that into the record, Madam Clerk.
Steel Brick LLC requests minor subdivision approval and an amendment to a previously approved major site plan for a condominium to add 1 unit to a previously approved 7-unit multifamily structure at 12 Cross Street in the neighborhood residential district. We don't need a determination of completeness. I don't believe this is just an amendment to a previous plan.
Okay.
Or a DRI.
We do, because it's also a subdivision.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so there is a determination of completeness component. Staff finds it's complete, I take it?
Yeah, we recommend it be determined complete, not a development of regional impact, and open the public hearing.
Okay, so there is a determination of completeness component and it's not a development of regional impact. Someone like to make a motion to determine the application complete and open the public hearing?
So moved.
So moved.
John's made that recommendation. Carol, you want to
Thank you,
second?
Rich.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call to on status. All those in favor?
Member Hicks,
Yes.
Counselor Pierce,
Yes.
Chairman Woodfin,
Yes.
Member Regan,
Yes.
Member Rosenberger, Member Teresa. She's like frozen on my screen. I don't know what happened to her. Member Foss,
Yes.
Member Smithmeyer,
Yes.
and Member Rosenberger.
Yes.
Great.
Okay, so that application has been determined complete. If the applicant's here, if you can make yourself known to staff, if we could get a quick staff update on this project.
Sure. So this was a 7-unit condo plan that was approved back in 2015. The applicant is coming forward with a slight amendment to include a 8th unit on the 3rd floor. This is a previous schoolhouse. And the only changes to the site plan are just a reallocation of parking. The subdivision component is the addition of that 8th unit. No major outstanding comments from planning or engineering staff.
Okay, any comments from the board? Questions, concerns? If not, we'll look for any member of the audience that does have a question or concern. If you could make yourself known to the
Well, I have the applicant. If you would like to.
applicants here. Yeah, we could hear from the
and,
applicant as well, and then we'll get people queued up if there's a question.
Yeah,
So
Mr.
if the
Azam.
applicant, Mr. Azam, if you'd like to state your name for the record and give your address, that would be great.
Yes, hello. This is Nawaz Azam. Thank you all for meeting like this. My address is for the site project 12 Cross Street in Concord, New Hampshire.
Okay. And if you could just give us a little update on the project, you've found some more space, or you're going to be putting another unit in the development?
Yes, it's been a great project and a great neighborhood. It's been working very well. I had purchased this project from another developer, and we took on their plans. Everything worked besides 2 units where they were very large for the area. Those condominium units on the second floor were sizing to be about 2,000 square feet. What we did, we made the sizes appropriate to the other 7 units in line with them, and we found about 1,300 square feet of usable space. Since the whole building has great character, we wanted to make use of that space and, make use of all the space there.
Okay. Any member of the audience wish to address this application? I see a hand up, Heather, if we could recognize another person.
I have Kevin Hanks, and I'm trying to.
There he goes. He's unmuted. If you could state your name, sir, for the record, and your address.
Sure. My name's Kevin Hanks. I live on 7 Steepleview, which I abut the corner of this proposed property change. I read through the notes on this, and it sounds like there were already some existing water and sewer concerns, and adding an additional unit. I don't see anything in there addressing the additional or the support for an additional unit. And there were parking concerns and privacy concerns. So basically 3 points.
Okay. If we could get an update from staff, either from planning or from engineering regarding water, sewer, and if there are issues or concerns regarding parking, we can address those, but specifically water and sewer issues, I'll need to defer to one of you guys.
There are some comments in the engineering report regarding the existing service. If Dave would like to speak to those, I would certainly defer to him.
I understand that a new fire service needs to be installed, and the question still remains whether the fire service will come off of Cross Street or Summer. Cross is in a moratorium, so that could be expensive to go into the water main on Cross. It's a longer distance to access the water main on Summer, but that street is not in the moratorium. So so we're still waiting to hear what the plan is there.
Okay, Mr. Azim, would you like to comment on the plan?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yes, so I need to address those 2 water and sewer issues regardless of this application for the other 7 units. It was proposed, and yes, we have accepted. We will be updating both. The water service for the sprinkler system will be coming from the Summer Street. We have a guy given us bids, and we actually already have a plan. I was under the impression there was a digging memorandum from the city until May some point. You could not dig, so we waited to submit any permits for that. But that's definitely going to be addressed. We need to do that regardless for all the other 7 units.
Okay, so the 7 units or the 8 units or 10 units or 12 units, it doesn't really matter at that point, other than the parking will address that. But the water and sewer specifically, if you did get approval for this project, would be conditional on the fact that you'd need to address the water and sewer to engineering's approval.
Correct. I believe that's already conditional on that. I know
Okay.
I cannot get my occupancy if we do not address those.
Okay, so let's address the parking and privacy concern issues that were brought up in testimony. Any comments or concerns or questions regarding that, Mr. Azim?
Yes, the parking plan has already been updated, and I believe these privacy concerns were brought up before when we requested 7 units. There is going to be a privacy fence along the back of the property and mostly all the way to both sides, and that's how we address the privacy concerns. those will be installed, and number of parking spots are about the same.
Okay. Mr. Hanks, did you have any follow-up questions or concerns regarding the testimony you've heard?
Well, in terms of the water and the sewer, it seems like until that's worked out, it doesn't seem like going forward with approving another unit. I know we talked, I was at the meeting back in whatever year it was, I forget now, the last one regarding this. And I think at that time they were talking about putting in an additional unit. And there were concerns about the space, the amount of space for the number of units in the building and the property layout itself. And regarding the privacy, construction's been going on over there for, well, Mr. Nazim probably knows, he could give an exact date as to when it started, but as a budding property owner, it's been going on at least 9 months, and there's no privacy fence. And currently, as it sits, there's piles of trash bags laying up against the fence. There's piles of plaster lath laying around. There's piles of bricks and debris laying around. It's just, you know, I know in one of the earlier sessions you talked about making it so that it looks good for the public. It certainly doesn't look good for the public or the abutting. So, you know, those are my points. I'm not trying to be. I realize
it's
progress
great.
has to go on, but you know, I got to live here as well. So
That's exactly right. Mr. Azim, any comments or follow-up regarding the state of the outside of the building or privacy issues that the applicant brought of the testimony you just heard?
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry they were disturbed by the stuff that's in the back of the building. I'd be happy to install a very temporary fence, like you know, along the fence that's there until we are ready to install the finished grade fence. We did not want to install a finished grade fence while we have to do site work at the site, which has not been started because you know we just got out of the winter. I'm happy to give them some more privacy, and as far as the work been going on, yes, we have been working there. This is a big school building. It is going to take several months to complete, and we do have necessary permits in place. We have had inspectors, fire department, and everybody else on the site. We have not been given any red flags from them, and I wish our neighbors would just sometime come over and say hello, and I would have addressed it just right then.
Okay. Point taken. That's good feedback. Any other questions or comments from the audience? Sam, I saw you run away a couple of times there. Any nope. Okay.
We got a comment from Code, and David Hall is listening, and I think I'd like him to ask his question, and I'm gonna unmute him right now so that he can bring that up. Allow to talk. Allowed to talk.
There you go. He's
He's
unmuted. So, Mr. Hall, welcome to the table. If you could state your name for the record.
Hi, David Hall. I'm the code administrator for the city of Concord. Hello, Mr. Zam. I know we've had a lot of discussions regarding the plans for this, and the last I heard in talking to my chief building inspector was the third floor was not going to be viable because of distance of travel and the height for the fire department to access for egress. As long as those two issues get resolved, I don't have any issues with this from a code perspective, but they were two significant issues I thought had prevented him from moving forward with it. So I was rather surprised to see this. It's just a point of consideration.
Well, thank you very much. That's obviously a very important consideration. Mr. Azim, are you aware of that, or has that been addressed in this plan?
Yes, so I am aware of those. Thanks, David. We are working with the engineer to address those issues as of right now. The way I understood it, the way it works, you get the approval for the unit, you do the layout, and then, you know, you get your plan stamp, the permit. The only thing we are aware of the distance from the outside exits. We worked with the fire department and the building code, and we addressed that for all the other 7 units. We are happy to address that for the 8th unit as well. Once, you know, we get some kind of a feedback, what the approval is going to look like. That's what my understanding was. We, of course, not gonna go start building tomorrow. We will have to pull another permit in accordance with the 8th unit, which will not be given unless they like the layout and the plans and it meets all the fire data.
Is the 8th unit going to be on the 2nd floor or on the 3rd floor?
It's on the 3rd floor.
Okay. Any follow-up, Mr. Hall?
No, I'm all set. As long as you understand, there's still some significant hurdles to get through to get that approved from a code perspective. Life safety.
Life safety. Okay.
Why not? We'll do that.
Okay. Anything else, Heather?
Oh, hold on. Nope, I think that's it.
Okay, so let's close the public hearing and thank the folks for their feedback. Sam, if we could get rid of the screen sharing. Whoops, there we go. Okay, so before us on the plans, and again, you know, the process is.
Excuse me, Reg?
Yes.
Yeah, I have my hand up. I don't know
I'm
if
sorry,
you can see
Suzanne.
it.
I didn't. I was looking on the other the attendees. I apologize. Go ahead, Suzanne.
That's okay. No, my question, I'm not familiar with the previous approval on this, but I was looking through the plans. I'm assuming that they had to do a landscape plan because of the extensive parking.
Yes.
Okay, checking, just wondering, because I was not familiar with the initial approval. Thank you.
Okay. So this is a change, Heather, right, to the existing plan that was granted?
Correct.
Okay. Is there a time limit on this as far as when did this start? 2015?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think.
What do you mean a time limit?
Well, is there a time limit if the approval was done in 15? Everything's still valid and moves forward.
Well, they received their building permits, so it's been sort of in construction for quite a while.
Okay.
So they're vested essentially.
Okay. Okay. Earl?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding David Hall's comments about life safety issues, I don't see those in the plan or in the recommendation of the board. Would they normally be there, or am I missing them completely?
I don't know if they would be on our side. It's usually code. The code type of stuff isn't something that we have to see, right, Sam or Heather?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, if there are issues that we know about, we try to, get them involved, but we don't usually look at the building plans at all.
Okay, thank you.
We just look at the site.
Okay.
So if he has other life safety issues that would not allow him to get the permits, it doesn't really matter what the approval is. They're not going to be able to get them.
And that's what, this approval that we're looking at, it doesn't trigger any waivers. It doesn't trigger anything from our perspective other than it fits in the lot and there's viable space. So we're obviously concerned about the sewer and the water, but again, those will be items that need to be addressed to engineering's concerned. We are concerned about the parking and the safety, so we recommend that the applicant work with the neighbors to identify if there are piles of brush and debris and construction waste, that those be either taken care of and be a nice neighbor is what we want. But from our perspective, and again, David Hall mentioned it, that whether this approval goes through or not, it doesn't change the fact that you'll need to get code on board with any life safety issues. So if we're good, I don't think we got anybody else that needs to talk on the issue. Any other feedback from the board? Or if not, we look for a recommendation. There's no waivers on this. 3.1 is to grant the amendment to the previously approved major site plan for the relocation of on-site parking. And 3.2 is to grant minor subdivision approval for the creation of an 8th condominium unit subject to the following conditions to be fulfilled within 1 year, which is outlined in conditions 1 through 6. Would someone like to make a motion to grant that amendment and grant minor site subdivision approval as outlined?
I move that we grant the amendment and the minor subdivision approval is outlined in 3.1 and 3.2.
Okay, that motion's been made. Do we have a second? Second's been made. Motion's been made by Councilor Pierce, seconded by Matt Hicks. Roll call vote for all those in favor.
Member Hicks?
Yes.
Member Foss?
Yes.
Member Regan?
Yes.
Councilor Pierce?
Yes.
Chairman Woodfin?
Yes.
Member Rosenberger?
Yes.
Member Smith-Meyer?
Oh, yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. We will hope that again, that, you know, the applicant works with the neighbors to issue and get those issues resolved. Let's move on to item 7F in our agenda. If we could read that into the record.
7F is Cloas Realty Management, not sure if I'm saying that correctly, on behalf of Capital Regional Development Council, requests major site plan approval to construct a 15,300 square foot structure and associated site improvements for the purpose of environmental testing laboratory at 51 Antrim Avenue in the industrial district. I believe this was previously determined complete, not a development of regional impact, and staff recommends that the public hearing be opened.
Okay, so the public hearing is open. We'll welcome the applicant to the table if we could get them queued up and get an update from staff on this project. I'd love to see this project going forward. I saw it at ADR. It's an excellent looking project up in this area. So let's hear all about it if we could.
I move we open the public hearing.
We don't need a motion to open. Thank you, though. Is this
All right,
Beth? Or is this Beth? Is this one of your projects?
It is. Yep. So yeah, this is a new laboratory building. They've addressed most comments. There's just a couple left to be addressed, but the majority of the comments have been addressed from the staff. They're requesting 2 conditional use permits, one for driveway separation, which we support because the adjacent driveway is just a municipal pump station, which has low use, and then for the use within the Aquifer Protection District. And they've provided us information that makes us feel comfortable that they meet the requirements for this. So yeah, staff recommends approval of the site plan as submitted.
Okay, and I see several folks have joined us at the table here. If we could take Mr. Nazim off, Mr. Azim off, Heather. I see Mr. Drobat, Mr. Nato, and Ann Kittner is on the call. If we could welcome them to the table, you could state your names for the record.
Hi, everyone. It's Chris Netto from Novus Group. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Excellent. And Chris and Ann, you can introduce yourselves if you'd like.
Sure. Chris Drobat, president of LaValle Brenzinger Architects.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ann Ketterer. I'm an architect with LaValle Brenzinger.
And I think we have Michael Sweat, the president of Eastern Analytical, on the line as well.
Yes, you do. Can everyone hear me this evening?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Well,
Great.
tell us, Mr. Nato, if you could tell us a little bit about this project. Again, I applaud you guys. It looks like a great looking building.
Sure. Yeah. So Eastern Analytical has been a very successful business on Chanel Drive for over 40 years, and so successful they've outgrown their building. So they are looking at the site at 51 Antrim, which is the last undeveloped lot in the CRDC Airport Business Park. And as you can see from the site plan, we're proposing a 15,300 square foot building with 75 parking spaces. And, you know, the lot itself is over 8 acres. It's encumbered by an easement for Eversource easement. About 4 acres, or about half of that's encumbered by the easement. But even with that, we're only using 15% of the site. So we think it's a very appropriate use for a piece of property that's been on the market for a long time.
Yes.
Again, we in addition to site plan approval, we're looking for 2 conditional use permits. One for the Aquifer Protection Overlay District, and that we're disturbing or I'm sorry, we have more than 2,500 square feet of impervious area. So we feel we've documented that we are.
Whoops, you dropped out there, Chris. Heather?
He's, I'm showing him as there and able to talk. Maybe he's having a connection problem. I don't know if somebody else wants to jump in the interim. Let's see, I can promote to panelist.
I just want to make sure he knows you can't hear him.
Yeah.
He could be just talking along.
I think he's texting us here. So.
I don't.
I don't see him connected.
Maybe he logged off and is going to log. Oh, no, he's still there.
We lost him at impervious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just tried to promote him to a panelist, but it didn't work. Okay, he's logged off. He's logged off. Or no, here he is.
No, he's there. You back with us?
I am sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I think my internet connection in the south end, everybody's using the internet at once, so it's been a little spotty tonight. I'm not
so
sure.
We lost you at impervious surface.
Gotcha. So we are requesting a conditional use permit for being in the Aquifer Protection Overlay District, where we have more than 2,500 square feet of impervious surface. So we feel we've documented that we are protecting the aquifer and managing stormwater and managing regulated substances that are stored inside the building. So the second conditional use we're requesting is for driveway separation. We are fairly close to the city's driveway to the pump station, but that's pretty infrequently used. So we feel it's an appropriate conditional use for that as well. And I have, again, we have the architects from LaValle Brenzinger, and we have Michael Sweat, the president of Eastern Analytical, with us, and happy to answer questions from the board.
I can't remember if there was any feedback from Architectural Design Review, and I got too many screens open to go back and look at my my minutes from the Architectural Design meeting. But I know they looked at exterior materials and colors and whatnot. It just refresh me. Was there any feedback from Architectural Design Review that anything needed to be addressed with the look and feel of the building? I don't think there was.
Happy to address that real quick. So the feedback was positive about the look and the feel of the building. There was one question raised about adding some planting to the parking spaces, and that's something we're looking at.
Okay, and I'm sure Suzanne will ask about the planting and what's going to be used there. So be prepared on that from a planting perspective. So we do have a public hearing component. Anything else that you guys want to add to this before we open the public hearing and look for input, feedback from the audience, from either Chris or the applicant at all? No. Okay.
We feel like. Yep. I just wanted to say we feel like the project fits in the neighborhood there, and it presents itself, the entrance well, and sets itself up nicely on the site.
Perfect. So I don't see any hands up, Heather. I don't know if you have any hands up. No. So let's look to the board. Any member of the board or the staff have any questions or comments or concerns regarding this application?
Well, Rich.
Yes, Suzanne.
You did mention my name. No, I just wanted to. The staff did a great job reviewing it, and I think that they should use the City of Concord's planting design details, which you mentioned. I think that you mentioned that they should at least take the baskets off, but they should just use our detail. And coincidentally, I just had a quaking aspen issue on a site, and they should probably reconsider it because it's almost like Japanese bamboo. It's invasive, really invasive, and it spreads by the plants come right off the root. So I think they should just kind of look at the list that you guys have prepared already for suggested shade trees.
Okay. So
And
you got that.
I think that's it. And I think any of the trees they use should really be placed to provide the shade.
Mhm.
So you guys can help them with that.
Staff can help them with that. Yep.
Yeah, staff can help.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? No? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We've got a couple of items on the docket here for this. It's 4.1 is to grant architectural design review approval for site plan and the building elevations. And 4.2 is to grant approval for the following conditional use permit, CUP per Article 28.3.6D4 for certain uses in the Aquifer Protection District to allow more than 2,500 square feet of impervious surface with the condition that the applicant complies with the performance standard as outlined in Section 28.6.3D1. CUP as well for driveway separation alternatives to allow for the proposed driveway to be 35 feet from the adjacent driveway where 100 feet is required. I think, again, the applicant addressed it, and I think staff doesn't have any concerns or issues regarding that application because the driveway is infrequently used as a city right of way. Anybody like to make a motion to grant those two recommendations as I've outlined to 4.1 to grant architectural design approval and to grant approval for the following conditional use permits as I outlined? Anybody?
Rich, are we doing them all at once?
No, I'm going to do that one separately. So I want to do, actually, no, John, why don't we do that? There's nothing here that's going to predict us. So let's do 4.3 as well in one, which is to grant the major site plan approval for the proposed 15,300 square foot building with associated parking and equipment storage area at 51 Antrim Avenue for the Industrial and Aquifer Protection Overlay District, subject to the following precedent and subsequent conditions noted. Precedent conditions A 1 through 4 and subsequent conditions 1, 2, and 3. So would someone like to make a motion to grant 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3 as I've outlined them?
I move approval.
I second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Let's do a roll call vote.
Sorry, Member Higgs,
Yes.
Member Foss,
Yes.
Member Regan,
Yes.
Counselor Pierce,
Yes.
Chairman Woodfin,
Yes.
Member Rosenberger,
Yes.
Member Smithmeyer.
Yes.
Okay, that application and all of the sundry items are approved as submitted. Let's move on. Thank you very much for the participants and the attendees on that. Let's move on to item 7G, which is Abbott Farms LLC. If we could read that into the record.
Abbott Farm LLC requesting approval of a proposal to address the Abbott House restoration in accordance with the Planning Board conditions dated September 18th, 2019, and requesting release of restrictions on remaining building permits and certificates of occupancy for the property at 382 North State Street in the neighborhood residential district. We
Okay.
don't have a determination of completeness or any DRI on this item.
Okay, so we're going to, if we can get the attendees queued up, I don't think there's anything that we need from staff regarding this. We've all heard this.
And just to add something, Rich?
Yes, yeah.
So I heard from the applicant today that they've addressed some of the issues that were brought up in the Bedard report that we talked about at the emergency meeting a couple weeks ago. They addressed the drainage. They've completed the roof over the door, and the overspray in the windows has been cleaned up. We haven't gone out. I just found out this afternoon, so we haven't gone out to confirm, but they just wanted to let you know that those have been addressed.
Okay, great. So let's open the public hearing.
Chairman?
Yes. Council Champlin, how are
You
you?
may want to, you may want to acknowledge my presence as a non-voting.
I will. So I've asked Council Champlin to sit in on the meeting again. He was part of the emergency meeting that we had on the 30th regarding certificates of occupancy for built units, and I've asked him to sit in on this as a questions and answers person, not particularly as a voting member. So he will not be voting in this, but he is open to ask questions during the public hearing portion of the presentation. So welcome to the table, Council Champlin. We'll also recognize that the applicant is here, and we'll welcome them to the table. If you guys could state your names for the record. I think Mr. Garland is still muted, but everybody else is off. So if you could state your names for the record and give us a quick overview of what you're proposing.
Good evening. This is attorney Liz Nolan with Nolan Law PLLC. I represent Mr. Garland and Abbott Farm. With me this evening, I'm in the room by myself, but also on this meeting is Jason Garland, the developer, and we also have Steve Bedard, I believe, is here also, just in case there are any questions that he needs to specifically address for you guys. So just to give a brief recap, again, thank you so much for meeting on the 30th of March for our emergency meeting. This meeting is addressing the future, that no additional COs or building permits be held up going forward based on our satisfaction of the conditions imposed at the September 18th, 2019 meeting. At that meeting, we've already addressed the first two conditions that were imposed, and the city and we are all in agreement that those have been satisfied, so I will not discuss those in any way. So this evening we are looking exclusively at conditions 3 and 4 from the September 18th meeting. Item 3 was that no additional COs or building permits shall be issued in the development until exterior improvements to the entire Abbott House, including the L, are complete to the satisfaction of a third party agreeable to the city. I believe I presented this at the 30th, but I'll just mention it again. We did submit a letter or a secondary report from Mr. Bedard that evaluated all of the work that had been done by the date of that report, and he listed out a couple of suggestions, which at this point we believe we have completely satisfied. The L roof was originally a temporary roof when we last met at a public meeting. That has been replaced to be a permanent roof at this time. Also, overspray, that was another suggestion in Mr. Bedard's report, that has been completed in its entirety. I want to address the drainage. The drainage gutter. So when the property was initially purchased by the applicant, there was a wooden gutter basically there because of the butterfly roof system. And I may, if the board members have specific questions on this, I would ask Mr. Bedard to perhaps chime in. But there was a wooden gutter system. Mr. Bedard suggested to recreate the exact similar gutter system so that we would do it in a historical preservation manner. We have recreated it exactly per those recommendations. That is now final. And Steve, I believe, can also attest to that if he needs to go that way. So our feeling for that third criteria is that no permits, no COs or building permits should be held up because we have completed the exterior improvements to the Abbott House to the satisfaction of Mr. Bedard. The fourth condition that we needed to satisfy from that September 18th meeting was that no additional COs or building permits be issued in the development until the applicant submits a plan agreeable to the planning board for the future development of the Abbott House. We submitted in writing to address to Beth, but I know forwarded onto this board our plan for what we would like to do for the Abbott House. It really is a regurgitation of a lot of what we've already raised to this board, but I'd like to just do a summary of the plan. The first item on that plan was to complete all exterior renovations by the August 2020 deadline. As I mentioned, we have completed all of those exterior renovations as suggested by Mr. Bedard in his report and supplementary report already. So we're good in terms of that August 2020 deadline. The second point of our plan that we are proposing is to subdivide the Abbott House from the Abbott Village to make it its own marketable plot. And in doing this, we are looking to evaluate the best way to make it marketable, such that a third party would be interested in taking it over. And that includes giving a reasonable amount of land around it, looking into the possibility of potentially having separate driveway. We have a lot of different criteria that we're actively looking into at this time. We would make the third point of our plan would be to make any necessary changes with appropriate city boards to allocate another unit to one of the other buildings to be built in the development to make the full 80 units that the condo is approved for at this time. Just to refresh everyone's memory, the Abbott House is the 80th unit. So we would be looking to subdivide that unit off and then create a new unit on one of the buildings that is to be constructed. And then the fourth item in our plan is to convey the Abbott House to a third party for future ownership and restoration, renovation, and or reconstruction. And I would like to just point out, we have taken a very proactive role to get to identify individuals and parties who are interested not only in taking the Abbott House over, but to restore it. We understand that that is a very important part or an important element of all of this, not only to this board, but to the community at large. And we take that very seriously. We're not looking, of course, for somebody who would come in and knock this down. We are hoping to identify someone who really has a passion for historic preservation that can bring this property back to its original glory. And that's kind of just my synopsis of our plan and our presentation and what we're looking for this evening. Are there any questions from the board that any of us can answer?
So let me thank you for, again, thank you for the quick summary and the overview of the project. I think we do have some questions and I know we'll get to them. I just want to make a couple of comments and put a couple things on the table. So the exterior improvements have been made to the satisfaction of Mr. Bedard. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And Steve, are you on? Can you speak to that?
Yes.
It's a lovely picture of you, Mr. Bedard.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Yes, they are completed to my satisfaction. I just wanted to make a comment though about the roof drainage on the east side in that butterfly roof system. The original one was never designed that way. The one that's there now is adequate. It actually moves the water further away from the building than the one that was there. And eventually that one will have to be changed to a permanent gutter system. But the one that's there now is adequate and is working fine.
And that's the one that kind of sticks out from the side of the building in a little Y shape? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so paint and exterior has been done to your satisfaction?
Yes.
Okay.
Given the parameters, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So you mentioned the subdivision, and Ms. Nolan, the subdivision was the intent of the applicant, or from the developer's perspective, they want to subdivide off this lot. Staff, can you give me a process for how exactly that happens? Is an amended site plan necessary to create the 80th unit? In this case, where they have an approved 80 units, they're going to subdivide off one, which brings them down to 79. Would they need to open up the can of worms or open up the process of going through the amended site plan process to do a new plan?
Yes, so it'd almost be what you just did earlier with 12 Cross Street. They'd be adding an additional unit. So they'd be subdividing one off and adding one to an additional building. So it would be an amendment to a previously approved site plan along with a subdivision application.
Okay. Something that was brought to my attention earlier, Beth, and I think you have some information on it, is mothballing procedures and being able to effectively mothball a building if this approval goes through and if the applicant is allowed to subdivide the project. If an applicant couldn't be found to take this over, or the building sat empty for 6, 8, 10 years, we want to make sure that it's correctly kind of put to bed as far as the mothballing process. And I believe it was mentioned to me that the National Park Service provides some guidance on that. And again, as if this does move forward, I'd like to be able to read something into the record as far as recommendation goes, that we do want to see some process put in place, not just, close up the windows and put a board over the door, but a true mothballing process to keep the building safe, secure, and maintained during the process of marketing it for sale. Do you have that?
Yeah, so this was recommended to us by Jennifer Goodman of the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance as an option. And she said that she could help us through this process. But the recommendation would be that they mothball according to the National Park Service Historic Building mothballing checklist. And there, as part of that checklist, there's like 6-month or 1-year checklist that they have to go and would have to report back to us that they've done those checks on the house, however long it remains empty.
Okay, all right, thank you. And from a perspective of marketing the product, marketing the project, marketing the property, excuse me, and Ms. Nolan, I'll ask the question, but I don't want an answer yet. So I want to ask the question, which is it going to be marketed with a real estate company, and are you going to have the ability to market the property and put it out there in a national or a regional exposure, and not just stick a sign in the front yard that says for sale? So I will ask the question and look for the feedback, Ms. Nolan or Mr. Garland or whoever would like to answer that question.
Absolutely. We are looking to not only advertise this locally, but regionally. Mr. Garland may actually be better to elaborate on this, since he has been working extremely close with his in-house team looking into this. Jason, would you like to speak to this in some more detail?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you. Yep.
Okay, so I've actually talked with Steve Bedard at length about this, and he might be a little bit better to speak to this. We have identified one individual that has some interest in it, but in addition to that, I've talked to Mr. Bedard about other marketing options where, he is involved in historic preservation. And, there was some discussions about putting it on his website, and he's a member of the New Hampshire Historic Preservation Commission, and, a cooperative arrangement where he would help with marketing it. And Steve might be able to address this a little better than I can, but, those discussions have been had.
Okay.
I can take a shot at it.
Sure.
Jason,
and again, Steve, I don't need specifics on who you're going to market to, how you're going to market to. I just want to know that, that you guys are talking about it, and it is a top of mind type of thing to get the biggest, widest exposure for the building as possible, whether it be a commercial building, whether it be a residential building, a multifamily, single family. I don't really care about all that. I just want to know that it's going to be presented and pushed out there as a viable project for someone to take on.
Well, that's certainly the intention at this point. We've even talked about, Jason and I have even talked about the fact that basically offering it to the right person for $1. Jason was not interested in, at least before, not interested in making money. He just basically wanted to see the building was taken care of by someone who could afford to do that. So
okay, all right. So that answers my question. So that the one of the last questions, I got two more, but one of the last questions is the plan for the next phase of this project. So if you look at the building today and you want to subdivide off the property, we need to get some assurances that that what's being subdivided off is going to be a viable product for someone to buy. So it's going to have a driveway, it's going to have parking, it's going to have front lawn, back lawn, side lawn, whatever area around the building is going to be used. This is, to me, we're not putting the cart before the horse. I understand why this process is going in this direction, but when we see these types of things, we'll usually see a plan, and it will present, to us a fully vetted plan that shows the footprint of the building, the layout, the structure, how it's going to look with the parking and the neighbors and the buffers and all of that. So we're kind of taking a leap of faith here in the sense that yes, you can do it, or no, you can't do it, but we want to make sure that what you're proposing is we're upfront with you and saying this is what we're looking for, and I just told you what we want to see. What do you guys have in mind as far as the subdivision, and before it gets approved? How do you see it, and how do you envision it looking?
So I will kind of begin answering this question, and then Jay, if you want to jump in at any point, just please feel free to interrupt. We have a scheduled call actually tomorrow again with the homeowners association within Abbott Village, because we want to know also from their point of view what will be good for the community that is abutting this property. So we have gotten feedback from them that they also would be looking for a separate driveway. So the plan that we presented to you already, which was enclosed with our February letter, that was a preliminary plan that we drew up several months ago just to give a general idea of what we would want for a subdivision, just to kind of conceptualize it so everybody could see it visually. That plan has not been updated since the first time that we submitted it to you. However, what we wanted to do was first run the idea past and make sure that this board knew we wanted to subdivide. Now that we are discussing this with the board, we can take those additional steps to begin discussing getting driveways and getting more concrete facts. At this point, because we haven't gotten a kind of soft blessing that a subdivision would be great, a good plan in the mind of this board, we haven't done a lot of that heavy legal lifting yet. So we can't give you a definitive, I can promise this will have a driveway. Do we want it to have its own driveway? 100%. We absolutely do. And once we know that the subdivision concept is, we're all on the same page, then that's some heavy lifting that I will do and continue to be in contact with the board and the planning department to keep everybody up to date in terms of where we are. If we run into brick walls and we need to navigate, that way we can get a little bit of feedback even before we submit our final subdivision application. So at this point, we can kind of list out what we'd love, but you won't see it on that plan since the plan hasn't really been updated. What we're presenting today is really just our concepts of the plan, our preliminary plan that was drawn up. But we can absolutely, if you have specific things that you would like to see us do or explore, look into in terms of whether it's viable or not, we are more than happy to look into all of those avenues. But with specific regard to the driveway, yes, we ideally would 100% want this to have its own driveway, and we will do the process of looking into that to obtain those approvals. Of course, it's never a guarantee that we'll get it, but we can submit the applications, we can talk to people, we'll do our best effort to get it. We of course can't guarantee the outcome, but that's our intent.
Okay, so one more point, and I see, Earl, I see your hand up, and I'll get you in just a second. I had one more point that I wanted to make. And again, we've talked at length with you guys regarding leverage and being able to hold your feet to the fire, because we have the ability to say we want things done in this particular way, in this particular process, and we're at the point now, we're kind of the tip of the needle, where we're getting to a point where we're going to kind of cut you loose if this is approved, and I'm a little hesitant. I'm a little hesitant to do it without some type of a covenant or some type of protection for us from the city's perspective on the next owner. You know, if you parse it off and sell it for $1, and the next person just decides that, you know, they're going to put some vinyl siding on it, or they're going to do whatever, you know, that we've lost that battle. So I'm inclined to, and I don't know what the language is, and I don't know how it would work, but, you know, incorporate some type of covenant that the historic character of the building be maintained by future owners, and we need some legal feedback on that, either with the city solicitor's office or you know, however we do that process. But I don't know what your thoughts are, Attorney Nolan, on that, but again, I would like to have some assurances from the city's perspective that this building is you know, going to be maintained in perpetuity going forward.
Absolutely. And that's actually a point that I have spoken with the city's attorney on. We are more than happy to create covenants that in whatever deed we use to convey this over, that this would be held in certain standards that are agreeable to the city. So what I would propose is that prior to us entering into any kind of transaction, that I would make the preliminary draft of those covenants and have your city council look them over, or even to have this board review it. If there's anything that seems glaringly missing, we can absolutely tweak. But we're 100% on board with making covenants that this will be a historic building in perpetuity and maintained to a certain standard that you're happy with.
Okay, great. So yes. Councilor Pierce and Teresa Rosenberger, you got your hands up. I'm going to take Councilor Pierce first because I saw him first. Go ahead, Earl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have just a few questions. One or two of them are short. To the issue of marketing, what would the time frame be on marketing, whether it be to local, national real estate firms? What are you looking at? How soon would you market it?
Oh, how soon would we market it? So we would, I don't have a 100% answer for that, but truthfully, it would be as soon as possible. My hesitation would be to put anything on the market that hasn't been approved as a subdivided separate lot. So you could preliminarily potentially market it, but that would take a little bit of legal research on my end to give that firm answer. I can definitely say that if we receive subdivision approval after the appeal period of that approval has expired, we would absolutely put that on the market. Now, if we could do it earlier, we would. We have already put out feelers to interested parties that we know just with personal connections. This, of course, is not on the open market, but we are having those discussions. We're not entering into any legally binding contracts. But the answer is as soon as possible. And that date, if we do need to wait until final subdivision and everything is recorded in the registry of deeds, which my gut is saying that is what we would probably need to do, that would be likely when it would occur. But I would do legal research to see the soonest practicable moment we could legally begin to market it.
Okay, thank you. My next question is, how much land are you proposing to convey with the Abbott House?
That number is not definitive to us at this point because we still want to, it depends on exactly how the subdivision will turn out. If we end up getting driveway approvals that are in certain locations, that may allow us to give a little bit more land, or it might require a little bit less land. However, the governing everything for us is making this marketable. We understand you can't just sell a house with no land on it. We completely understand that, and we want the amount of land allocated to the Abbott House to be comparable to other properties in the area that are similar. So we don't know the exact square footage as of now. We will have a much clearer idea once we have that subdivision plan finalized and submitted. But ultimately what we're looking to do is make this as marketable as possible. So as much land as we can dedicate while still respecting the budding Abbott Village, that is how much land we will allocate to the Abbott House.
Okay, so my follow-up to that, if I may, Mr. Chair. Excuse me?
Can I, this is Jason Garland, can I speak to that?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
What the conceptual plan that we submitted from Brown Engineering included approximately half an acre of land.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. So right now, the site plan is 80 units on, what is it, 15.8 acres of land, roughly?
Roughly prior to subdivision.
Prior to subdivision. So now what you're seeking is to have 80 units on 15.3 acres of land. Let's say if you do a half acre.
Yes.
What does that do?
Less than the density requirement.
I'm sorry?
Which meets the density requirements. And the reason for adding the 80th unit to the existing proposal is because if we don't add an 80th unit, we have to go back through the Attorney General approval process and change the declaration. You know, the previous units we've sold were sold under the agreement that it was 80 units.
And that leads to my question, Mr. Garland, is if you are now, with my familiarity, easy for me to say, with condo docs, your declaration right now at the end, each unit owner would own 1/80th of 15.8 acres, roughly. So now that would change to the 80 unit owners would now own 15.3. So you're saying that for that purpose, the declaration would not have to be changed and that would not affect an amended site plan because of the density?
There would be an amended site plan, and there would be, I'd obviously have to notify the AG's office that we've amended the declaration. But if we had the communities, the associations vote on it at this point, you know, and I'll have to defer to Liz on all the legal pieces of it, but I think that that's probably very doable. And from what has been deferred to me, the association is in agreement with it. So I don't think the association's vote would be an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was muted. Teresa, go ahead.
I have a couple of questions. Attorney Nolan, if I understood you correctly, what you're looking for is that the board agree in concept to a subdivision.
Yes. So
you're just looking, you're not looking for an approval, you're looking for conceptual approval, I would say, or agreement. And then I'm assuming you would come back to us with the actual subdivision so we would know what we were talking about and know what was being marketed. Because yeah, I hear you. You can't market until you know what you've got. So you're not looking for an approval of a plan tonight. You're only looking for conceptually that we think you should keep going in this direction in your plan, and then bring it back to us when it's flushed out a little bit more.
So the condition imposed on us was that no additional COs or building permits be issued in the development until we submit a general plan agreeable to the board for the future development of the Abbott House. So when in our plan, what I outlined earlier, which mostly is the subdivision, we are asking that this board find our general plan as outlined in our February 19th letter as satisfying that condition. So we just want to be told that our plan to go ahead with the subdivision is a good plan that everyone's in agreement with. When we get the blessing on that, we will then begin to put our foot on the gas to get our subdivision application together. So that would be a separate thing that we would then bring to this board.
I don't mean to disagree with you, but the way I read this, it says until the applicant submits a plan agreeable to the planning board. It doesn't say anything about a general plan. So that means to me that until you come back with a plan, that no more COs. And it sounds to me like conceptually you're going in the right direction from my perspective, but you know, I don't know that we know even that what you're coming up with as a subdivision is even remotely marketable. I know you want to market it, but
well,
I was just,
yeah. So it's extremely expensive for us to go through the entire process of creating a subdivision plan with all of this detail in it. And so we have actually gone to, I asked the planning department several times to review our plan just to make sure that we're on the right track, that this is sufficient. And so we have submitted a plan that outlines as much as we believe is reasonable to satisfy that condition. We don't think we should go any further until we know that a subdivision is what you want, because that's an extremely expensive process for us to bring in the engineering, create the additional plans, do the legal research. That's an extremely expensive, high burden on the applicant here when we were only required to submit a plan agreeable. I have asked for a lot of guidance on what that plan should look like, what should be in it. And what I produced was really the best faith effort that we could give. We weren't given any real specifics. Oh, I apologize. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. I guess my question is, you can't market it. So you are a long ways away from marketing it because you can't market it until you have a subdivision plan.
Exactly.
That's what I'm hearing you say.
Exactly.
So in some ways, I don't know. I don't know whether it's the tail wagging the dog or the cart before the horse, but
Teresa, Heather's got her hand up to maybe give us some clarity. If we could just get, well, no, just some clarity if you want to offer some clarity, Heather.
Yeah, so at the time that when we originally came up with that condition for a plan, there were a wide variety of very different proposals being discussed about what we might expect from them and what we might be able to require them to do, you know, ranging from everything from fixing the interior, which would not involve subdivision or any plan of any sort, or to, you know, putting down financial sureties, to requiring some type of purchase and sale with a third party. I mean, there were a lot of different things that staff and the board and legal counsel had discussed as paths forward. And in the last meeting, when we said the word plan, it was not at that time intended to refer to an actual plan. It was intended to refer to, well, tell us what is your solution? Tell us something that will help us to, you know, feel confident about granting you more building permits and COs. Now, having said that, that's not to say that, well, two things. When they come back with a subdivision, it's fully up to the board whether they want to grant that approval. So if there are conditions that the board wants to place on the plan, you know, the board does not have to grant that subdivision if you feel that it's not an acceptable plan. But we would expect that to be sort of at a later time in the process when they come back with the actual plan. Because when we first made that fourth condition, we didn't anticipate there necessarily being a physical site plan. You know, we didn't know what their solution might be. So that's what it was intended to refer to. But now that I've got your attention for another moment, I just wanted to put it out there that neither planning nor engineering staff is in support of a secondary access to the property. We feel very strongly that they should have a shared access the way they do now, and an easement be granted for access to the property. We've never been in support of another driveway being put in there. Engineering is definitely not in support of a curb cut on that road in that location for a number of reasons, and we can get Dave back on here. But I don't think now is the time to discuss that, but I just wanted to put it out there for everyone to be aware that, you know, the board as well as the applicant, that staff does not support another driveway. And so whatever solution they come up with, they should really focus their efforts on just assuming that they're going to have to share that access.
I have one follow-up question probably to you, Heather, but also to Attorney Nolan, is that way back when we heard from the association, one of the issues was if you do a subdivision and depending on how you do it, that they may have to go back and redo their documentation of their legal documentation. Are we sure that it's not the case now? Because it certainly sounds to me like, yeah, we're now going to have an 80th unit, but is the acreage going to be the same that they own? And I know the developer doesn't really want to have to do any amendments to do much with the AG's office, but what are the owners, the condo owners, going to have? What's the consequence for them if we approve this in concept and then eventually we approve it, a subdivision?
Was that a question?
Yeah,
that's a question for Ms. Nolan or you,
Nolan,
whoever
yeah.
can answer it.
I do not know the answer. I would what they're telling us is that, you know, they replaced it, the 80th unit. So I think that's a legal question for
Right.
it's two things. One, it's a private, you know, it's a private document among parties that we don't necessarily get involved with, but it's a legal question for, I think, their counsel. Although I can understand the board doesn't want to do something that would potentially be like onerous or difficult for the, you know, the
And I hope maybe some of the associations out there so they could maybe make comments as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so I will, I'll try and field that question as best I can. As I mentioned, tomorrow we are having a conference call with the association and their attorney, just so that we periodically touch base with them. We wanted to give them a recap of what happens this evening. But what we have said to them in all of our past meetings, and what we say again now, is that we don't want this to be a burden on the association. That is our biggest goal. Now, I I haven't looked through all of the association's current documents in great detail prior to this meeting. So I would want to kind of come back with a better legal answer for you after I review those and after I speak to Attorney Wood, who represents the association. And I'll have the opportunity to do that tomorrow. That being said, again, the association in general is in support of this because it won't be a burden on them to kind of take care of this building and going forward. Although it is an 80th unit, it is still attached to them, and that's some concern. So what we're doing is trying to make it as easy as possible for the association owner, the unit owners. If there are any changes to be done, that will be a collaborative effort between me and their counsel. Of course, you know, lawyers, we like to kind of go back and forth a little bit. If the association is on, they can definitely speak to that also. But I think that's kind of the best answer I can give at this time until I get a little bit more information after our meeting tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Did I
you.
see another hand up from a panelist? I know we've got an attendee that would like to speak. Any other questions from the board? Heather, I think we've got an attendee that would like to speak as well, Mr. Hirschlag.
I will now, so he should be able to speak now.
So you just need to unmute Alan for us to hear you. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We can hear you now, yes. Welcome to the table. If you could state your name for the record.
Sure. My name's Alan Hirschlag. Thank you very much for taking the time to hear my testimony and my concerns. I know the hour is getting late, so I will try in the best of my ability to not ramble on here. I want to start by stating I don't believe this is a plan. It's barely a concept. And I don't know how, and I'll come back to this later. I don't see how at this juncture this could be accepted as a plan. It seems to me there's way too many moving parts. The idea that they're going to share a driveway, they're not going to share a driveway, they're hoping on access on North State Street, which the city, I could never imagine an additional access point off of Route 3 being approved by the city. But I want to go back to a couple of points. At the March 2nd, 2005, going back a few years, it was listed, the proposed condo development was listed as a 79-unit townhouse condominiums and to preserve the Abbott House as the 80th condominium unit. So the original approval was clear that the Abbott House was part of the condominium development. They have no vested right, I believe, to request or require that an additional unit be attached that as the 80th unit that doesn't include the Abbott House. So let me move on from there. I was going to go through some other stuff, but it's all been gone over tonight. So let me just focus mainly on a couple of other points. One is the subdivision issue. And the other is that they keep on stating that they have no requirement to renovate the interior. But all the documents that we look at in the approvals from previous planning boards and their written responses to the planning board and to the city all indicate, going back to Mr. Tangway, that this that the Abbott House would be redeveloped completely, including the interior. There was also some discussion at one point that if it wasn't used as a residential unit, residence, that it may be converted to a commercial property. But when I look at the RN district, the neighbor that it's zoned in, it's virtually impossible to have any commercial use there. You could get a bed and breakfast by special exemption, a daycare by special exemption. There's virtually no, other than a minor home occupation. There's virtually no other commercial use that would currently be allowed without either without going to the zoning board. Subdivision issues. The first one is, I think, unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a response from the Department of Justice as to whether or not buildings with different costs or in a condominium development would be able to charge different rates for the homeowners association fee. The limited amount that I've read, it's my understanding, and I certainly stand corrected, that if you have a number of different units of different sizes impacting the exterior of a project, that perhaps those units could be charged a different rate. So I would like to know before, and I would think the homeowners might be interested to know before they're going to have shared driveways and subdivisions and maybe additional costs related to updating, their paperwork with the Attorney General's office as to if the Abbott House was developed as part of the condominium development, if that, because of the differences in exteriors, if there would be, if a separate rate would be able to be charged. And that might be interesting to find out because some of the roofs on the older buildings are metal roofs and some are asphalt, which would also indicate differences in maintenance costs as the years go by. Let me get specifically to the subdivision. So my biggest concern, and I hope Attorney Nolan has answered it, would be that there would be something placed in the deed, a covenant or covenants that would require the preservation of the of the Abbott House, and it would be spelled out much more clearly than it appears any of the previous plans have. So let me be clear. I don't think at this juncture that any additional building permit should be issued. I think if anything, this should be tabled tonight until you see a real plan. And in addition to that, I would suggest that there'd be that at a minimum that they have a new owner with a purchase and sales agreement signed, that any conditions that are placed in the deed, that the wording is agreed to prior to any building permits being granted, and that deed is filed, and that the deed be filed, that all paperwork for a revised condo development be approved by the state prior to any building permits. A minor one, that the site plan, in the site plan, that the berm be completed, and that any additional sign-offs that would require inspection of the Abbott House or that subdivision, that the city would be able to inspect and sign off on that, not a third party. I have absolutely zero confidence that Abbott Farms LLC will follow through with an outcome that would be agreeable to the community if building permits are issued prior to at least the conditions that I have suggested. What happens if they come up with a subdivision plan, they subdivide it, and they can't find and they can't find a buyer? I heard Chairman Whitfin talking about mothballing it, but you've got a piece of property just sitting there that can't be used. We look at the conditions that they've signed off on, that Mr. Bedard signed off on, that the building was painted, that they've done the roof. But when I've walked by the building, and I haven't gone on their property, I noticed I had concerns in the fall when they were painting it because of the temperature variations and how cold it got at night and how wet. And on the southwest corner of the building, there's some paint that's starting to peel. So I would hope that the city would take a look at that, or maybe Mr. Bedard would go back, since we've given him the responsibility to sign off on it, and really take a close look at that as the temperatures start to warm, as to how well that paint is adhering to that clapboard. And again, I would just like to reiterate that at this juncture, because of a lack of even the Abbott Farms LLC doesn't seem to have a specific plan. They're sort of poking around in the dark, you know, throwing stuff out there, hoping something will stick. That you do send them back to do some serious homework, and you table it at this time. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to express my concerns, and I'd certainly be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Hirschlag from the board?
Chairman Woodruff, can I speak?
Yeah.
So we offered a plan that we thought was what was beneficial to the association, the city. We've had many restrictions or things imposed on us that we had to do. We've followed all of them. We've met all of the contingencies based on the last meeting. The original approval required we complete the exterior of the Abbott house. We've done that. We believe we've met all requirements of the original approvals. So at this point, the plan to subdivide was strictly in what we thought was everybody's best interest. But if not, the Abbott house is the 80th unit in the subdivision. And if the city wants to impede us on moving forward with this, you know, at this point, I don't know, every time we have one of these meetings, there's one more requirement, one more restriction. And at this point, we want to move forward with the subdivision, which we believe is in everybody's best interest. But if we're held back based on they don't like this plan, right? The plan is Abbott House is the 80th unit. We've completed all of the city's requirements in restoring the Abbott House based on the original 2006 approvals, the revised approvals, every hurdle we come in front of, we've completed the requirements to it. The plan is the Abbott House is the 80th unit, and if we're held up, you know, I don't know what other option you give us. Do we file a complaint against the city? Do we take this to the next level? I don't know. And I'm frustrated at the fact that we continue to give the city everything they ask for, and we get nothing in return.
Well, I don't know if that's entirely the process, or there's two sides to every story. But let's assume for a minute that that we can move forward, or we can't move forward. I mean, we'll address that and figure out how we want to do it in just a minute. But let me just make sure that there's no other panelists or questions from the audience. I see Mr. Hirschlag's hand is still up. I don't know if you want to speak again, Mr. Hirschlag, or we'll excuse you and let you put your hand back down.
I'd like to speak again, if I may.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I don't know if I misunderstood Mr. Garland, but it's absolutely correct that the Abbott House is listed as the 80th unit. In the March 2nd, 2005 minutes from the regular meeting of the Planning Board, Steve Henninger, who was on the city planning board staff at the time, explained this proposal to construct a 79-unit townhouse condominium project on the east side of North State Street and to preserve the historic Abbott House on the site as the 80th condominium unit. Additionally, when we get to June 16th, 2014, the minutes indicate that the 2010 approval of the plan of phasing the project had 6 phases. And you have to remember at one time it had 2 phases that was corrected to 3 phases, and then it was expanded to 6 phases. Phase 4 has consistently included 2 buildings consisting of 16 units and the Abbott House. So that was supposed to be completed. The Abbott House was supposed to be completed as the 80th unit prior to the pool being built and prior to the final, the last remaining phase, phase 6, to be completed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further audience member that wishes to speak? It doesn't look like we got many people left, but anybody else like to speak? Just make yourself known. If not, any panelists, any member of the board wish to comment?
Yes, hi. This is Steve Bedard. I just mention a couple of things. This whole subdivision idea was my idea after being on site for about 20 minutes. Having looked at this building back on the original subdivision and following it since then, and after talking to Mr. Garland, it became obvious to me that one of the most likely ways that this building was going to get saved so that we all appreciate it in the long term was going to be subdivision. So that was my idea. Something else that a couple other things I wanted to mention. The preservation brief for mothballing is actually preservation brief number 31. It's very extensive. It's very, it has certain guidelines that have to be followed in that mothballing process on a 1 to 3 month, a half a year, and a yearly basis. And there's a long list, checklist. Another issue that was being talked about is how do you, to a certain extent, guarantee that someone won't put vinyl siding on the building? That was mentioned. You could certainly put preservation easements on the structure. Those easements could be held by a group like the Preservation Alliance to make sure that whatever is done to the house is done appropriately. That's certainly some options that are available.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Champlin, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is not a question, but a comment if it's permissible. I think that the chairman outlined some very solid points at the very beginning of this. It's not my impression so far that the members of the planning subdivision concept, and in fact, I personally think that it's a very attractive option. Certainly, I agree with the board member Rosenberger that I'm sure what we have is a concept and not a plan, and that in order for there to be a plan which can be approved by or accepted by the planning board, we really need more definition about it. I think that Mr. Hirschlag's proposal to table until we get that definition merits some consideration. But at this juncture, I think that the motivation of the planning, well, let me not characterize. Certainly, my motivation would be to find a path to preserve the building and certainly to take it off Abbott Village's hands. Because it seems clear that it's not they don't have a real solid interest in doing a work on it to make it into an 80th unit. But I think that from my perspective, it would be advisable for us to have a little bit more tightly wrapped plan before we give any green lights.
Okay, thank you, Council Champlin. Any other further comments from the board? Questions, concerns? Any comments from staff regarding what we've heard tonight? And again, I think Teresa's point regarding the plan, when it was in here, and it is in your packet under the discussion points, a condition. In addition, no additional COs or building permits shall be issued in the development until the applicant submits a plan agreeable to the planning board for future development of the Abbott House. So I guess we've got kind of the tipping point of the crux of the question here is what's before us tonight a viable plan for this building. And again, we've talked a lot about what we want to see, and we can certainly put together the laundry list of things that we've talked about tonight, from driveways to a fully vetted plan that we can look at and say, okay, that's going to have plenty of parking. It's going to have a curb access or street access from the existing with an easement. How do we hold it out that we want to move this plan forward, but still give us the ability to make sure that it's done the way we want it to be done? And I don't know what the answer to that is. Matt, I see your hand going up, so feel free.
So I think the comment here, I think subdivision is a good option, but I don't think we would allow any subdivision to happen without going through the subdivision process for any other applicant. So I don't know why we would make an exception here and have a conceptual plan rather than going through the subdivision process. It is going to cost money, but then it gets this off their hands permanently if that's done. So they might have to invest in the time and the money to do that and do it correctly, because it doesn't make any sense not to make them go through that process.
So if you were asked for the question, so if we simplified the ask here from my perspective, and we said here tonight in this board, in the presence of this board, the applicant is suggesting that that the subdivision for the Abbott House be done in the following manner. We don't have a plan in front of us, so we can't approve anything. Could we give them a conceptual yay or nay that we're amiable to having the building subdivided and cropped off? Heather, I see your hand. Unmute.
So I just want to reiterate what I said before. They would absolutely still have to come before the planning board with a subdivision plan and an amendment to the site plan. They're not getting around that. They're not getting past that. They're not getting any approval whatsoever for anything. The only thing that, and to be honest, I was against using the word plan in the original condition number 4 for exactly this reason, because it was not intended to be a plan. It was intended to be like, hey, what's your plan for dinner tonight? Not like, hey, give me a physical architectural drawing of what you're going to do for dinner tonight. So it was always intended to be, and I think that the intention to use that word was intention to leave it very vague and ambiguous about what the plan might be. But I think it's just causing confusion. I think that the board can, if the board chooses and they say, we want to see the plan, we want you to make an actual proposal, then I think that's what you need to tell the applicant. We like your idea of subdivision, we want to see the subdivision. I think that's totally reasonable, but I just want everyone on the board to be clear and understand that if you don't require that and you just say, okay, we accept subdivision is your plan and go ahead and get your building permits and COs, that does not mean that they are not coming back with an actual plan. They are absolutely coming back with an actual plan. So just to make that clear, I don't know,
Okay.
Was that helpful?
Yes, it was. Thank you. So let's go ahead and close the public hearing portion of this formally, if we can. I do see Suzanne's hand up, so we'll take Suzanne next. Go ahead, Suzanne.
So I think that the applicant is acting in really good faith. They've done everything that we've asked them to do, and I think this is one of those situations where we have to have some flexibility. I mean, this applicant the original application was a very long time ago. And I believe that they want to do the best thing for their own project and for the community. And so we have to have some flexibility. And conceptually, they really want to do the right thing. And at this stage of the game, I think we have to have good faith that they're going to do it because they've done everything that we've asked them to do, pretty much.
Okay.
And then when the time comes, they will provide the plan, but they need some flexibility to actually sell the property, which, you know, was a great recommendation because it does benefit the city. It benefits the historic nature of the property, and it also benefits Abbott Village and the applicant. So I think we can kind of live in this flexibility stage because we've worked with the applicant and they've pretty much done everything that we've asked them to do.
Okay. Thank you very much
And I'll
for
put
that. Thank you very much, Suzanne.
I'll
Whoop,
put
go
my
ahead.
hand-
Sorry. What's that?
I'm putting my hand down.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Matt, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, I just have to respectfully disagree with Suzanne. I think you can't sell a piece of property that's attached, right? You have to subdivide it first. You have to go through that. So I don't know if we're still getting caught up on this plan idea, but I'm comfortable with saying to them, go forward and subdivide and go through the process. And I don't know about good faith. I read the letter from the neighbor about the berm that I don't know any information about that other than the letter that hasn't been planted or was, you know, allowed to overgrow. The only way that we got anything done on the Abbott house was with a lot of conditions. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened. So it's good faith because they've done what we've asked them to do because we made them do it.
Beth?
Can I just address the berm? That is something I've spoken with them. They have cleaned it up and it is getting planted this spring. So once the planting season does open. So they have worked with code and us over the past year to get that cleaned up and for the plantings in this spring.
Okay, thank you. Teresa, I saw you next.
Yeah, I totally agree with Matt on this, and I'm sorry, Suzanne, I respectfully disagree. He's right. They've got to do it to put the property on the market. It's to their advantage to put the property on the market. And I don't think we're asking too much for a little more definition of this. I mean, I have a hard time voting to approve this when we don't even really know whether they're going to have one cut or two cuts or how many parking spaces or what. So, and they've got to go through the process anyway at some point.
Yep, okay. Byron, I saw your hand up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also have to respectfully disagree with Suzanne for many of the reasons that Matt and Teresa meant. You know, I think about what Ronald Reagan said about the Soviet Union, trust but verify. And I think we've had a very solid working relationship with Abbott Village as long as we've had some leverage. Remember that the genus of this whole issue was their request to tear down the building because it was unsalvageable, and a request to get out of their obligation to restore it or to, you know, I'll just say restore it. I mean, let's not get into how to define that. You know, and it was this planning board that basically put its foot down, asked for a second opinion. We got Mr. Bedard and his very, very significant expertise involved, and suddenly we found out that no, it's not a tear down. It's a quite salvageable historic structure. So I appreciate everything that Abbott Village has done to this point, but I also know that once this planning board has no leverage with Abbott Village, I have less certitude that things are going to go forward. I think they are acting in good faith. I suspect that they want nothing more than to have this building behind them. And so I'd like to find a pathway, as I said earlier, to get there. But again, I hesitate to be too quick to release or to sacrifice all of our leverage before all the ducks are in line for the.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Suzanne, or sorry, Teresa?
I just have one more comment. You know, and I do appreciate what they're doing. They're really making tremendous progress, which is great. But when I look at this, I'm not looking at it from a leverage point of view. I'm really looking at it from a process point of view of what we should be doing. And it's the process. It's not leverage. I do believe they're honorable in doing what they believe is best, but I just can't agree to it from a process perspective.
Okay.
And
Thank you. Heather?
I have a suggestion. I think that it's a good idea to, I understand everything the board is saying about having more information and retaining some leverage. I just want to point a few things out. They have, I'm not sure, maybe Beth can clarify, but a lot more building permits that they need for this project. They've also been starting like last week trying to get building permits to keep moving forward because they're at a point when they got their COs, those are done. They need building permits so that they can continue with work. And just to be sensitive to like economically what's going on in the world today, I think it would be helpful to maybe give them some building permits so that they can move forward and retain some of the leverage by not releasing them entirely so that they can come and actually, while they're doing the subdivision, get more buildings in the ground and keep people working and, you know, keep as much momentum as they can to providing housing and keeping people working. That's just a thought. If you give them like eight more building permits, then that would, you know, give them some time to do their subdivision, come back. So that means they would have to come back to get released the rest of the permits, but they would be able to keep moving.
And I'm sensitive to that, but I'm also sensitive to not kick can down the hill any longer. I mean, we've addressed this and it seems like we've addressed it. And I don't know, I don't know what the right answer is, but I think I'm getting pretty close to having a couple of recommendations here. Matt, I saw you waving your hand. Do you still want to speak? Mute.
Yeah, I think I agree with Heather. I don't think that if we allow them to have more building permits, they still have to satisfy the conditions of the Abbott House. So it doesn't absolve them of that by giving them some of those building permits and having that continue. I think ultimately it's in our best interest as a city to have the Abbott House not be part of Abbott Village. Because I think then we can guarantee at that point that at least it's off their plate, they can move forward and we can work with somebody else.
So that's at the core, I think, of this particular issue. And I think that from a directional perspective, if we can tell the applicant, hey, we as a planning board agree in concept to subdividing off the Abbott House from the Abbott Village Association, we're not going to give you any approvals. We're not going to let you move forward with that until we see a fully vetted plan with the outlines. But we as the board aren't going to throw up another roadblock that says, no, we don't want you to do that. We want you to do it this way. That's, I think, some of the frustration that the applicants had in the past. And quite frankly, I think it's some of it's just, you know, it's brought on by themselves. I mean, whether it's this owner or the prior owner or however it all happened, you know, it's not something that we imposed unduly on the applicant. So I'm sensitive to all of it, but I'm also sensitive that we need to move forward. Heather makes a great point that if we do allow additional building permits to go forward, that work can continue, and we're right back in the same thing. We'll be talking about this in 6, 8, 10 months, a year, whenever they come back. But I guess the question, and it's in the recommendations of our packet here, recommendation 2, which staff recommends that the planning board review the proposed plan as submitted and make a determination whether the plan sufficiently addresses the future development of the Abbott House. I'm not comfortable at all saying that I'm comfortable with the future development because of all the things that have been mentioned here. So I mean, are we at the point where we can tell the applicant that yes, we're in favor of subdividing it? We think that's probably the only viable solution to keep the house standing and move forward, or no, we don't want to do anything and we want to table the application, or we want to, you know, not address it at all. And I think we need to address it. So I'm going to say that I would, you know, and I don't know, Heather, what the process is from the recommendation perspective, but, you know, can we make a verbal recommendation that that we feel as a board that subdividing off the Abbott House is in the best interest of all parties concerned, and that we are amiable to the plan, provided we get the plan and can view it. How do we form that in something that the applicant can then turn around and start to, consciously go and move to the next step and start spending some money to get subdivision stuff put together? Anybody? Staff? Heather? Beth?
Me?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm. Nobody can see my hand waving.
Well, yeah,
No,
I can't.
I
Sorry.
saw you. I saw you.
Sorry, Suzanne. I got too many screens to look at to try to keep everybody straight. Go ahead, Suzanne.
I put my hand up and I take it down. You don't see that big flashing blue hand going up in front of me?
Sorry, go ahead. What do
Anyway,
you got?
I agree with Heather. And I think we can, I would agree with the concept of what they're doing. We should not hold it, because I totally feel they're invested in doing the right thing. But being someone who, for a living, comes up with concepts, knowing that this is what you're going to get, but it's, I can't give you the complete details. I think what Heather said would be a great alternative, because you're allowing them to go forward. I believe that I think it's probably the best thing to have it subdivided, and that will happen. But if you're subdividing it before you actually know what's going to happen to it, that's a very difficult thing to do. So it has to be a conceptual agreement. And I don't think you should hold up the whole process, because you don't actually have the plan in hand.
Okay.
And that's what my hand in.
Thank you, Suzanne. I saw Earl next, and then I got you, Teresa. We'll get you in just a sec. Go ahead, Earl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This has been a great discussion. I do want to commend Mr. Garland, because for one of the last 10 years, he has done a great job in preserving that property. But I wonder if it's beyond our purview to say that if we do go forward and give him permits, building permits, and I would love to see him take advantage of the building season, is there any way that we can require that as he markets these new units, that it's understood by potential buyers that there won't be a certificate of occupancy until other matters are settled, such as the subdivision of the Abbott House? So there isn't an expectation on a potential buyer that they're going to come in, and we might, because we had some issues last time of people not knowing and expecting the COs, and the pressure it put on planning and this body. So
well, we can certainly make it as we can certainly make it as a recommendation. I don't think we can require it, but
okay.
I think, Heather, maybe we can. Go ahead, Heather.
No, I think that my impression is that they really want to do a subdivision that would work for the board. So I do feel that they're invested, and I don't think they're gonna go away and never come back. They want to finish this project. They want to finish this process. And if the board does give approval for a certain number of building permits, they're going to come back. Right now we're sort of kicking the can down the road by, if we don't give them anything, they got to come back in a month. If we give them some building permits, I think they're probably still going to come back in a month with a subdivision plan to just get this done. Staff, we had always assumed that if we went ahead with the subdivision, that it would be marketed after they got the subdivision. I'm sort of less concerned at this point about the COs. I mean, I might even say, hey, give them the building permits and the COs, but you could say, because I don't know how fast they're going to need those COs. But I think that if the board is fundamentally in favor of the concept of subdivision, that I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable saying, but we're still going to hold off your construction for 30 days.
Right.
No,
yeah, I think
because
we're
I don't
in
think
agreement
that,
there.
I think that you can maintain some leverage and let them proceed. I mean, it's a very difficult time for people right now. And I think that we have enough information to know that we want them to go in this direction. And if we hold back on so that I got information, they need 29 more building permits. So 5 for one building, 7 for the other. So for 2 buildings, that would be 12 permits, and that would be basically through the summer. That would be like 2 or 3 months if they didn't come back. It would be like 2 or 3 months. But like I said, I'm anticipating they're probably going to come back as soon as they can with that subdivision because they want to get this over with. But then there's still another like 17, 15 or whatever building permits that they need. So that's still a pretty significant amount of leverage. It's not the case that they're almost done. They're not.
Let's try to get through this. Teresa, I saw your hand up several times, and I'll let you have at it here.
The other thing that is truly still troubling me is we haven't heard from the association owners, and it's great they're going to talk to them tomorrow. But again, I'm just uncomfortable approving things and not having heard from people that may be impacted.
You would hope that if they were, if they wanted to speak in either in favor or opposed to it, that we would have gotten some feedback. I know we got feedback on the berm, but we didn't get any feedback tonight from any attendees. So let's do this. Go ahead, Heather. Sorry.
I just want to follow up on that point. The association, their concern all along has been they do not want to be responsible for this building. They do not want to be financially responsible because if Abbott doesn't fix up the interior, then and they just say, okay, whatever, we're not going to fix it, we're just going to continue on, then it's the homeowners association responsibility to fix it or do everything with it, anything at all with it. It's their responsibility. So
and then again, I think
they
that's
want to get rid of it too because they do not want to be responsible for it. That's what they wanted all along.
Not to butt in there, but I think what is before us tonight is, do we do nothing and say, no, we don't want to do this? Or do we give them the nod of the head and the conceptual approval that says, you know what, we're comfortable with subdividing it off. We're going to have all kinds of issues and all kinds of constraints regarding subdividing it as far as how we want it to be preserved going forward. And we can address those once a formal plan has been brought to us. But if we address it tonight in the fact of, this is the only thing we can do. We don't have a plan to approve. There's nothing we're going to vote on to say we're going to approve it or not approve it. All we're going to do is give them a conceptual approval that says the right course of action is the subdivision and move forward with that, bring us back the plans. And again, if we want to roll into that, opening up 12, did you say 12, Heather? Just give me a head nod. 12, yeah. 12 additional building permits for them to continue the building process. We don't lose any leverage at that point because we haven't agreed to anything or disagreed to anything. So obviously not probably what the applicant wants. They want a different output, but again, I'm sensitive to kicking the can, but I'm also sensitive to the fact that we want to do this right and make sure that everything is dotted and I's are dotted and T's are crossed. Any thoughts on a motion or any thoughts on moving this forward? I see Suzanne's hand up, so you didn't even have to butt in, Suzanne, so I'll give you the floor. Go ahead.
No, I loved everything you said until you said but.
But?
Yeah, because I really think that they still have to come back. And I guess they could say, fine, we won't subdivide it. We'll deal with that. So, I mean, I really think this is a process, and I agree with Heather 100% on that.
How so? What do you mean?
Well, I agree with what she said. I agree with everything she said, and I agreed with what you said, your first sentence, until you said, but.
It's always the way I talk too much.
It sounded great. I think conceptually, the idea of the subdivision works for everybody, but it's hard to define it until you know who the buyer is. And then when that happens, then we still have the control. But for the time being, the whole purpose is there is nothing to be lost by giving them the permit to build. Right.
They got more in the ground, and the same conversation will be had again. Okay, so how do we move forward?
I think we have to vote on it.
So, but again, are we voting on giving them a conceptual approval that we feel that the best interest of the Abbott House going forward is subdivision, and we'll favorably look at subdividing out, not favorably, but we will review the subdivision plan once presented to us, and give them the ability to put 7 more building permits and start getting things in the ground? How do we form that into a solution that works for them? Go ahead, Heather.
Well, I saw Heather raise her hand, so.
Go ahead, yeah, Heather.
I was just trying to come up with a motion, but I don't know yet if the board is in favor of that. I mean, I don't think you've sort of taken a vote to see.
No, and I'm happy to make that motion. If you can help me put the words around how to do it and see what the board thinks about it.
I'm writing something like allow. Well, and the other question is, would you want to withhold the COs or would you want to allow the COs?
No, I don't want to do the COs until I want to withhold the COs.
So I would say allow 12 additional building permits, withholding all remaining building permits and COs until the applicant returns with a proposed subdivision plan.
That's right.
So moved.
And to Earl's note, to Earl's point before, we'd expect that the applicant, if anybody, was coming to the table, that we don't put an applicant, we don't put a potential new homeowner in desperate straits where they're looking at it and saying, hey, I didn't know that I had these covenants, or I didn't know that these things were hanging out over my head. So Teresa, I got you. What do you got?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I would prefer your language, which was 7 building permits. And it seems to me if they want 5 more, they can come back. But I think we just have to take this in steps. And I'm uncomfortable with the whole thing. I can vote for 7.
Okay, who else? I saw somebody else. Beth, go ahead.
Can I just clarify something? So when we're making this motion, say the building permits are per units, because you get permits for foundations. So we just want to clarify that they're building permits for 7 additional units.
7 additional units for 12 additional units. Okay. Did I see somebody else's hand go up there? Suzanne? No? Okay. What's the flavor from the board's perspective as far as 7 units or 12 units? It doesn't matter to me. I'm just looking at it from a winter, a summer schedule. Is 7 units enough, or is 12 units? It doesn't really matter to me, given the fact that we've got the ability to kind of drive it and kind of push things forward from that perspective.
I would say give them the 12.
Okay. Any flavor for that from the board? Yay or nay?
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just want to add in that they've requested foundation permits for those 2 buildings. That would be the 12 units. I think it's easier for them to do the 2 at the same time, yeah. Economically more feasible to be able to do at least the 2 foundations at the same time, which would be the 12 units.
Okay, so as part of my motion, when I make it, would be for 12 units, and we can look at that, and I'll make sure we say for 12 units as opposed to just 12 foundations or 12 applications. Heather, any help on a motion?
So the recommendation would be allow 12 additional permits for 12 additional units, withholding all additional building permits and COs until the applicant returns with a proposed subdivision plan agreeable to the board.
Okay, and then so that would be one piece of it, and then the secondary piece would be our kind of nod of the head on the subdivision piece. Do we need to?
No, I think this covers the whole thing.
That covers the whole thing. Okay, so
because you're basically saying return with the subdivision plan. That's your way of saying that's what we want.
Okay, so just as Heather read it there, I'm making that motion here. Would someone like to second that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, that was Suzanne seconding it. So any further discussion regarding that? Let's do a roll call, see where we are. Heather? Oh, I'm sorry, Beth, you had your hand. I'll hit you, Beth.
I just have a question. At this time, Liz had alluded to this and Steve had mentioned the preservation easement or covenants. Do you want to cover that now, or would that be covered as part of the subdivision application?
I want to do that as part of the subdivision application.
Do we need to say
that-
that it should be included in the subdivision application?
This absolutely should be included, yeah. So
maybe amend it to
we
say-
may amend it to include the, what was it, the covenants and the, tell me again,
Um,
language?
Yep, to include covenants and any deeds for the historic preservation of the building and look into a preservation easement. I don't know if we can require it, but we'd like them to look into a preservation easement.
Okay. So as part of that, that would be included in that motion. Does that change your second, Suzanne? Are you okay with a second on that?
Totally okay.
Okay, so we got a motion and a second. Can we do a roll call on status from the board, Heather?
Member Hicks?
It's late, Matt. We know.
I know.
Doesn't, the space bar doesn't always work.
It doesn't work when you're on another
I'm fine
screen.
with that. Yes, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Member Foss?
Yes.
Member Reagan?
Yes.
Counselor Pierce?
Yes.
Chairman Woodfin?
Yes.
Member Rosenberger?
Reluctantly, yes.
Member Smithmeyer?
Yes.
Okay, so that is unanimous, and let's just, I'm gonna ask that the applicant work with staff regarding, any clarification that they need on that. We're happy to address anything again in the next meeting if it needs to be addressed, but I think this is as good as we're gonna get as far as the subdivision piece until we see a fully vetted plan, until we see where we're gonna go forward. Okay, so that takes that item 7G. We are done with that. Any other business, Heather, to come before the board tonight?
There is none.
No, it's only 10:24. Come on, we must have something else. So with that,
Well, can
I am gonna.
Can I just say a shout out?
Yeah.
So, Beth, are you still involved with all the trails?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Yeah, a lot
just
of
want
use.
to say, well, can I just say something? Obviously, I live in East Concord, but the trails in Broken Ground are amazing, and the interpretive trail part of it is even more amazing. And I'm very proud of the city of Concord for all the work they've done on the trails. One of the things that Roy and I are doing during this stay at home is we are going on every God blessed trail in Concord until we're done, and then we're going to move on to the next town. So you should take advantage of it. It's amazing. Thank you, guys.
Outstanding. Great shout out. That's a great shout out. So, hey, John Regan, I'm going to look to you for a motion to adjourn. John's so moved that even though he's on mute, he's so moved.
I'll move in his behalf.
All right, we got a motion to adjourn. And it's been roundly seconded. All those in favor, we're going to forgo the roll call for adjournment. Heather, is that okay? No, do it. Go ahead. All those in favor.
But we raise our hands
Yeah,
say
raise your
aye
hand.
all at the same time.
And Suzanne, are you raising your hand?
There was unanimous. It was
All
unanimous.
right, we're unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you all. It was a little challenging, but we got through it. So I appreciate
All right.
everybody's
Be
patience.
safe,
We'll hope
everyone.
to see you soon.
Okay, stay
Bye-bye.
healthy.
Night.
Good night.
Keep your distance.
Yeah.
Figure out how to end this meeting.